It's here. There you go. Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to today's work session. It's situated here. We're going to start off with call bills for final reading and vote. First, we have on page 7, Amy Grassi, the Department of Permits, Approvals, and Inspections, Bill 69-19.
Good afternoon, Madam Chair, members of the council. Bill 6919 proposes to allow the county to accept a bond as a performance security to secure obligations on private development projects that are going through the approval process and have been approved in Baltimore County. Section 32-4-101 of the County Code sets forth the forms of performance security the county accepts to guarantee public and private infrastructure and improvements as required as part of an approved development plan for private commercial or residential development. Currently, the section states that letters of credit, cashiers, checks, or cash are the permitted forms of security that can be deposited for those obligations. The most common form used by developers is the letter of credit. Those letters of credit are submitted and reviewed through the county agencies, and if accepted, are then maintained in the Office of Budget and Finance. The county had historically not included bonds in the list of the forms of security that were acceptable, and this goes back some time to a point when such forms were not insurable under the Maryland Insurance Administration as they are today. But because those now have a greater review at the state level, it's something that we were willing to consider in addition to the letters of credit, cashiers, checks, and cash. The process of converting letters of credit had also been deemed advantageous to the county over bonds in the past because they don't require a claim or an investigation occur when there is an allegation of breach by the county in the development project. The difference being that a bond, when we are holding it and we want to convert it for a breach, we have to put in a claim. The securing party then researches the claim and determines whether or not it's valid, and then also determines how they're going to act, if they are going to perform the obligation or if they are going to allow the conversion to cash to the county. At that point, as we do currently, if we converted it to cash, then we would be looking to perform the rest of the work that security was securing with those funds.
Do any of the members have any questions for Ms. Grassi? No? No. Yes, Councilman Marks.
I just want to thank you for your work on this. I know there's been a lot of back and forth with the industry and the administration, and this is a pretty consistent policy in a lot of other jurisdictions. So thank you.
Anyone else? Thank you, Ms. Grassi.
Thank you.
Next, on page 23, we have Mr. Will Anderson for a contract. Good afternoon, Mr. Anderson.
Good afternoon, Madam Chairwoman. Congratulations as well.
Thank you.
Members of the council. Fiscal Matter 2, the contract. This is a contract for our anchor institution strategy. We're requesting approval of the contract with Margrave Strategies. Compensation will not exceed $105,600. You'll remember that the county executive's strategic report and his transition report both focused on one key economic development initiative around anchor institutions. And this contract that we bring before you is one of the key elements of executing our anchor strategy. What we're doing is identifying the anchors around the county. And if you think about the word anchor, really what we're seeing is several of our massive institutions in both the higher ed side, the health side, the federal side, and just large employment side. By being embedded in our community, we should be putting an extra focus on what benefits can the county receive by putting extra effort into these institutions. And I'll give you one example. When we look at the first research park in the state of Maryland, it was ours over at UMBC, BW Tech. And that park has been so successful that it's completely full. As Councilmember Quirk will tell you, we have a great engine of small companies over there, and we need to grow so that they don't leave. They live in our neighborhoods, they pay our taxes, they go to our stores, and they want to be next to our university. We see that when you look around the country, places that are investing in helping development and placemaking near these institutions are thriving communities. And there's just an abundant amount of work to be done here. Bringing on Margrave for about a year worth of work to cover this scan and do a deep dive in both short-term, near-term tactical work that we're doing at these universities, and long-term over bigger opportunities that we see that could benefit the county. That's what this contract is all about.
Just for public knowledge and for people watching at home, could you just give a little definition of what the anchor institutions are?
Sure. We do have it in our notes so that people know what we're considering anchors, because some people think it's just universities.
Right.
But actually, it's our higher ed institutions, it is our medical institutions, and in our case, here in the county, we do have large federal installations, but it's also large employment centers.
Right.
So like a Trade Point Atlantic, it really is an anchor. At one time, Beth Steel would have been considered an anchor of that scale, and the multipliers of supply chain and workforce that all spin off. So these are of scale where we're talking about thousands or tens of thousands of impacted employment.
All right, thank you. Do any of the members have any questions? Councilman Crandall?
I do, Madam Chair. Mr. Anderson, can you sort of delineate, I understand that Chris McCollum, who's now in your department, will be heading this up from the agency level.
Right.
Now we're bringing in, or potentially bringing in, should the contract be approved, bringing in a consultant. Can you sort of delineate for us the duties of Mr. McCollum, and I don't know if he has staff or not, and the consultant and how this works together?
Sure. I mean, as I said about the abundance of work, we could probably put a team of 12 people on this and really execute dozens of projects over the next few years. We've added a staff member focused on anchor institutions, and that's Chris McCollum. So he's been teeing up this work across the county. The role of the consultant, and as you look at the competitive bids that came in, many of them did it differently, but the way Margrave does it is they embed themselves into your team to expose. So they're doing a big research piece about what's available at that anchor. They also do a layer of research about the anchor clusters. So if you think about the numerous anchors that are in Towson, for example, as the county is a large employer, they're doing that level of research analysis and providing back to us what the opportunities are. But they're also executing on a short term with, for example, at Towson. Towson's coming up into the core, which is a tremendous activity that's going to net us great benefit. They're going to be doing tactical pieces of work to support. Just we don't have that many people on the ground that can do the kind of work to pull communities together and build programs around. So it's a combination of both doing the analytical and providing the reports and actually doing the tactical support.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Anyone else? Councilman Quirk?
Thank you, and good afternoon, Mr. Anderson.
Good afternoon.
How do we prioritize, what anchor institutions are looked at? And how many are we kind of targeting, do we know?
Yeah, do you mean, do we start with District 1 and go
That's
to
right.
District 2?
Is UMBC Research Park number 1? I guess that's what I'm really asking.
Well, part of what we're doing in this contract is getting a full inventory of what's there, and also what's there is what's time sensitive. So when I speak of the research park, they're really at a moment in their own strategic planning and at the state with UMBC about where do we grow. Towson University is at a moment of coming up into the core this calendar year. So that'll drive some of the priorities about what activities we can do. And then if you look at something like Trade Point Atlantic, there's activities that we need to do. For example, we're tying the community college locations over on the east side of the county to Trade Point Atlantic and the employers over there. And the county executive is going to be leading a job effort over at Trade Point Atlantic. Some of that is short-term. Some of that may be long-term that we don't need to prioritize until, let's say, later in the year when we discover that offshore wind is going to come to Trade Point, hopefully. Then we'll prioritize that project based on what's the timeline. But we actually have some urgent and massive opportunities that will drive the prioritization.
And one more follow-up, if I could, is are we going to get the county council will get a report that's a public document, or what's
Yep, we're going to be producing several documents coming out of this. There'll be tactical elements that come out of it as well, but we have 2 different phases of this contract. In the first 3 phases, that's where this qualitative analysis of what's out there comprehensively, and there'll be deliverables out there that we can share from that stage. And then the longer term, there'll be a presentation that shows short, near, and long-term tasks related to all of our anchors. And some of it will get into the weeds with, for example, financial models. Like Margrave has got a lot of experience at Salisbury and College Park and other places to look at if we're going to get this institution to make investments that are sort of out on our edge, out into the communities and improve the communities. What are the financial models that they can do that? So some of it may get a little bit tactical on what needs to be established, but there'll be work product that we can share back at the end of this that will help inspire real projects to get moving, short and long term.
Thank you, Councilman.
Thank you.
Marks.
Will, you mentioned Towson. We obviously have a lot of work going on in Towson. Development finally coming online this year that has been 7 or 8 years in the pipeline. I guess playing devil's advocate, why is this type of contract necessary if we've been successful attracting that development without this type of contract?
Well, I think that's a fair question. I mean, the fact that Towson's coming, right? So we have students coming, we have faculty coming, we have administrators coming. I think we're going to end up having joint programming on business engagement activities with our department and other parts of the county. You and I have both taught at the higher education level. Higher education is focused on a core set of businesses. Some of those are not necessarily the engagement with the business outside, which is why the Towson University invited us to talk about how we could work together. It's not necessarily their focus to maximize their anchor's investment. But when we look at other institutions that have knitted into town, like President Schatzel will point to Ann Arbor, right? And the economic benefit in Ann Arbor to the people there exceeds that of the university. It's so knitted. And if you also look over the arc of the recession, and you look at these towns and research parks, they were not impacted by the recession at nearly the rate anyone else was. They are a bit recession insulated because of the investment that comes into those big anchors, but they aren't automatically looking at, well, how do we do collaborative programming? Their core mission is something different. So having their presence here is stage one, but it is a heavy lift to pull these pieces and get a mutual benefit. And if you look at College Park, it's Took a long time. It took a long time, and not that everybody didn't have mutual interest, it just, it's not necessarily the natural for all of these programs to jump across between higher ed and business and community.
I'm glad you brought up College Park. I played devil's advocate in my last question, and now I will say something in favor of Margrave. I mean, what they've done in College Park is pretty extraordinary. You know, I went to the University of Maryland 20 years ago, and it's much different than it is today. It's, I think, a lot more denser than Towson will ever be, taller than Towson will ever be, but certainly they've developed partnerships that have really allowed that community to flourish over the past decade.
They really have, and I think they're built, you know, they're built around their unique
Right.
assets and their position, just like each of our anchor strategies will be based on what's the strength here, what's the strength of our community here, and what belongs to keep building up upon it. So College Park's got some great things happening. They've got WeWork and Adobe, and then they have some really small things attached around the hotel. I think we can have those kind of things. They'll just look different in our communities, but they'll benefit our communities the same way it's happening at College Park.
Anyone else?
Madam Chair, if I may?
Yes, I'm sure.
Well, I'm glad that you're providing some definition for what an anchor is and where they may be located around the county. And I think the timing is appropriate for us to be looking at this because we're already seeing the uptick in investment in the Dundalk area, the North Point Boulevard corridor, with Trade Point Atlantic being a huge spark to that. But across Back River, we have the community of Essex, which is sandwiched in between Route 43 and all the positive development going on in Councilwoman Bevan's district and Trade Point Atlantic. And you know, this council approved the creation of a sustainable community designation for that business corridor on Eastern Avenue. It's in a CRD, I believe. So there are things put in place to, I think, help incentivize investment into a very stagnant corridor of Essex. But this is, in my mind, one of the communities that can be lifted by these anchor economic centers or employment centers that community is sitting right in the middle of. So I'm hopeful that we can come up with some more strategies to help the Essex community.
I really think that's possible. If you look at, I mean, the scale of anchors is that we can have impact at distance. So think about like Amazon HQ2 coming into Northern Virginia, and we know the benefit of those 50,000 jobs is it's going to come all the way up here into our market. Think about that a little bit smaller with anchors and Trade Point Atlantic. This knits together a second focal point for the county executive on revitalizing those corridors. So I'll give you an example. UMBC has now entered Arbutus with their Okamoka coffee shop. So it's a small place, but it's a big statement that these anchors rely on our neighborhoods that are adjacent to them and that they can coexist and they can mutually benefit. So I think thinking about that with the East Side and Essex and other communities and our anchors is totally possible to knit these two together.
Councilman Patoka?
Thank you, Madam Chair. First, let me just say I think Margrave does great work. I have seen the work they've done around the state, and I have a great deal of confidence in it. But I want to piggyback on something Councilman Crandall said earlier in terms of economic development resources and how we shift and redeploy resources with Margrave coming on board. So unfortunately, we're not seeing an uptick in economic development activity in the Pikesville area. Reisterstown is getting designated as a main street, so we do see Reisterstown gaining ground. But I'm wondering if bringing on Margrave, does that create an opportunity for you to redeploy your resources? So, for example, if they're taking on the brunt of the work that Mr. McCollum was doing, can you redeploy your resources to focus on areas that do need that aren't experiencing an uptick and do need intense activity? So, for example, maybe someone that lives and breathes the Pikesville Armory every day, do you have that ability? Because now it looks like Margrave would come on, and then you can shift around your resources?
I think that's a good point, is if we take on new staff, and that's what we're not doing here. I mean, that would be the other idea, is rather than contract for short terms, is to take on new staff, which we're not doing. What else can we focus on? So we have 21,000 businesses in our county. And when I look at the group of people that we get out into the field to cover them, from the T. Rowe Price, the Trade Point Atlantics, to the mom and pop flower shop on Main Street, we have a handful of people. So deploying them is kind of that is the key question, is how do we do it? Now, something like Pikesville Armory is a massive project that demands massive attention. It's not just it's not just a piece of property. It's and you're driving that, and folks in the administration, Sam O'Neill and other folks, are really focusing on that with real intent. But Margrave, as a contractor, does free up some of our staff time to work on numerous projects that are, fortunately, we're still very busy in economic development. We have a ton of prospects out there that we want to see them come to fruition.
Because I really worry about inner beltway commercial areas. Catonsville is doing exceptional. Actually, it's an outer beltway area, I think, in Catonsville.
The Paradise is inside, yeah.
Yeah, Paradise is inside. But I do worry about the inner beltway neighborhoods and our attention to them.
Yeah.
And I just wonder if this, and I did, Ms. Rogers, you'd be happy to know, I read the strategic plan from beginning to end. And I think it fits within the context of the framework of the strategic plan, that we start to use this opportunity of having a consultant come on, and then shifting staff to areas like Pikesville that really do need intensive attention from our economic development staff.
Yeah, I appreciate that, and I'm glad we've been able to have our team, Jessica, on our team is very active there as that unfolds. And I understand it's a long-term project. It's going to take a while, but we're happy.
Not just the Armory. I mean the Armory
And
could,
Pikesville.
in the future, be an anchor. Certainly, we're looking at some kind of activation prior to it, and then phasing it in if that's possible. But the rest of Pikesville is what I'm talking
Yeah,
about.
the
If Mr.
revitalization.
McCollum is freed up, can he be attentive to that, or can you structure other members of your staff to be attentive to that in addition to Jessica, because Margrave is taking on some of the day-to-day activities that's going on in the economic development.
What Chris is focused on is the anchor work, and it is enormous. I'm glad we're able to bring in Margrave to help. The work inside our corridors is something we're trying to reorient toward. How can we be there too? How can we focus on the commercial corridors as well?
And that's a full-time job, the anchor institution coordinator?
Oh, yeah.
Is it a new job?
Not in, no, it was from last year. It's not a 2020. The county hasn't done this work in decades past. I'll say that. Other places have put a focal point on it.
It's not really a legacy job of Baltimore County, where it's been in place for many administrations, I guess, is what I'm getting at.
Correct.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Ms. Rogers, you had a question?
I would just amplify what Will is trying to say. This is a opportunity to strategically leverage resources by having Margrave come and join us, and then help us to look at enterprise-wide in terms of the county's needs and how anchor strategies can translate to opportunities broader and farther, inside and outside the Beltway. So I think as we move forward and get that lay of the land, having colleagues and help from Margrave is going to help us really prioritize and then see what opportunities are out there. So this contract is very helpful to us, and I think at some point allowing us to prioritize, because that's what we're trying to do, because we want to work on as much as we can, because the time is flying. You know, we know in accounting we're term limited, so time is flying, and get everything that we can in place while we have time to work with you all, and as many projects as we can. Looking through the anchor strategies as well as our overall economic development efforts.
One suggestion I would have for that might be a bridge for an anchor institution in helping some of the inner Beltway neighborhoods and those in the, outside the Beltway as well is so, for example, LifeBridge Health, the hospital can be viewed as an anchor institution, and Northwest is probably the largest hospital of that corporation. Nonetheless, if you look up the Reisterstown Road corridor, you'll see LifeBridge facilities along Reisterstown Road throughout. In fact, you'll see some that are LifeBridge, some that are Carroll County Hospital, which are part of the same corporation. So maybe perhaps Margrave or Mr. McCollum can look at that, and how do we harness that anchor institution that's a little fragmented in the corridor, but when you pull it all together,
Yeah.
it's a large employer.
Absolutely, and that whole part of our county it's a key area to look up and down that whole corridor. So yeah, it's not just, are the
One might
buildings,
be a surgery
might not
center.
just be the buildings are contiguous that we consider it an anchor.
One might be a surgery center, a surgical center, one might be a fitness center, but they're all part of a larger anchor institution.
Yeah,
And
we are,
they're
yeah.
and they and some are just clinics, but they're employers. They shop, you know, they go to lunch, and they create economic activity, both direct and indirect.
Yep, that's a great suggestion. We'll certainly look at it that way.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you,
Thanks.
Will.
Councilman Marks?
I'll be very brief. I formed a task force a couple months ago looking at the Lock-Raven Boulevard Joppa Road intersection. We've made a lot of progress. We have some really good discussions with some institutions in that area, and it would be my hope that we might be able to perhaps utilize this consultant should things come to fruition. I think that area is really underutilized and underinvested.
I think that would be great if we can share the work that's happening there on traffic flows and what's potential with new developments with Margrave. We're already underway on starting to look around the county, so anything that is ready to be shared, would love to share that with them. Thank you.
Anyone else? Thank you, Mr. Anderson.
Thank you.
Next, we have Steve Walsh, Director of Permits and Public Works, for Bill 6819. And it looks like you will remain seated for a while. Looks like you have about 4 contracts and 5 addendums. And I did forget to mention at the beginning of the meeting, both Councilman Catch and Councilman Jones are not feeling well today, and that's why they're not at the work session. Good afternoon.
Madam Chair and members of the council, good afternoon. Bill 6819 is a supplemental appropriation. We're asking for approval of the supplemental appropriation of federal funds totaling $2,124,383 to 2 bulk capital projects. And those are street rehab in the amount of $1,163,176 and the minor bridge repair item for $961,207. The funds will be used to reimburse the county for 75% of the cost of projects related to the big storm in Catonsville of over a year ago on Thistle Road and River Road. And this is FEMA funds, so this bill would allow us to receive those FEMA funds.
Okay. Councilman Quirk?
I just appreciate your work, and you know, when all this was happening, I do also appreciate you coming out to the community, talk to this overflowing large group of people, hundreds of people, and Steve did a great job, and your department is exceptional. So thank you very much.
Thanks.
Thank you. Anyone else on this bill? Okay, you want to move down to the contracts, page 28.
Sure. The first one is a contract with G&W Trucking. And and they're going to provide on-call snow removal and salt application services for the county. And basically, these contracts, this one and fiscal matter number 10 are similar. They're providing manpower and equipment to us to supplement county resources for snow removal. So the contracts basically go a snow season and have 9 single-year renewal options tied to them. So if the vendor does a good job, we'll bring them back. The compensation's tied to a schedule similar to state highway schedule. Years ago, they were snapping up all the resources out there, and the county had to match those to be able to get some supplemental resources for the occasions when we have big storms. Hopefully, we will not have any this year, but who knows?
Winter's coming.
Winter is coming.
So there's no fiscal summary on either one because
It's tied to the amount appropriated for
Okay.
snow removal.
up to 25,000.
There's no
Okay.
contract cap.
Okay, thank you. Page 32, number 4. On-call towing.
Fiscal matter 4, administration is requesting approval of a contract with Ted's Towing Service to provide on-call towing services for county vehicles and equipment. And this is primarily used by our equipment operations group, who services fire engines and large county pieces of equipment. The county would commence upon council approval, continue through December 31st, 2023, and could be extended for an additional 120 days. Again, this contract does not have a cap. It's tied to the amount appropriated for the activity. We estimate about $116,000 for the entire 4-year term of the contract. And again, this supplements the county's equipment for towing. We do have a tow truck, but occasionally we need additional services.
Right. So did this go out to bid, or was Ted's
This
selected because of the type of equipment that they have for hauling these big pieces of our equipment, like fire trucks and things like that?
this was piggybacked off of a Baltimore County Public Schools contract.
Okay,
So we needed that size equipment, but they had a contract available, so.
okay, thank you. And then we have an addendum to contract 5. I have that right?
They're actually new contracts, so if I could,
Oh, okay.
I'd like to talk about fiscal matter 5, 6, 7, 8, and 9 together as a batch.
Okay. Yep, go ahead.
So these contracts are for, the service is on-call sanitary sewer pipeline design services, and which could include pipeline design, force main replacement, trenchless construction design, permitting, basically anything involving sewer pipelines in the county. There was a public professional services selection committee meeting which selected all 5 of these firms. It was held last year. There was 2 tiers of selections made here, and just to remind you, there was an executive order signed by the prior administration in July 2017, which wanted to expand minority and women business opportunities in the professional services area, identified and guided us to put out smaller value contracts to give smaller firms an opportunity to bid on those. So this was our first foray into the multiple tiered approach for professional services, and Whitman Requart, Rommel Klepper and Call, and AECom were selected for the Tier 2 contracts, and those were higher value contracts, $4 million upset limit. They were 4-year terms with 4 single-year renewal options on those. And Frederick Ward Associates and Michael Baker International were selected for the Tier 1 options, and those were smaller value contracts. They were $1 million in upset limit. One of the auditor questions was about Micro Baker International and whether it made sense that a large company would get a smaller contract. No, it doesn't make sense that a larger company would get a smaller contract. They were given that opportunity. We thought that the larger contracts or larger firms would go after the larger contracts. We'll be working with the law office to tighten up that language for the next go-round. But it did serve a purpose. It did allow some smaller companies that had never bid on county projects to bid. 7 proposals were received for the Tier 1s, and 13 proposals were received for the Tier 2 opportunities. So it did serve a purpose, and Frederick Ward and Associates is a smaller company, so they actually got a contract with the county where they have not had one in the past.
Okay, thank you. Yes, I'm sorry, yes.
Madam Chair and my colleagues on the council, Ms. Rogers and Ms. Madigan, I just want to indicate that I'm going to recuse myself from voting on item number 7, a fiscal matter. My wife works for that firm, and so I won't be voting on that matter.
Thank you, Councilman Patoka. Okay, then we have contract number 10 on page 36. Did I get that wrong?
Contract number 10 was, I mentioned it before, so a
sorry.
snow removal contract.
Mhm.
I can go through it again if you'd like, or
Okay.
similar contract to fiscal matter 3, similar form contract, exactly the same, a little different equipment that they're providing us, but the same contract.
Okay. Have we covered everything?
One more,
11?
fiscal matter 11.
There we go. Page 40.
Administration's requesting approval of a contract with Cummings Wagner Company Incorporated, doing business as ESCO Pump and Valve, to provide on-call services for the fabrication and repair of customized machine parts used in the county sewer pump stations. Contract commenced October 6, 2019, would continue to April 5th, 2020. May not exceed $25,000 unless the council approves it. The contract would continue through October of this year and have 4 single-year renewal periods. This contract was bid through competitive procurement and does have a contract cap of $365,000 for the entire 5-year, 3-month term of the contract with extension periods. And I do want to offer, if any of the council would ever like a tour of a sewage pump station, they are absolutely amazing pieces of engineering. And some of the bigger ones closer to Back River, like pump 80 million gallons a day of sewage to ultimately get to Back River. So the engineering and the construction behind these things are amazing. The first time I went down 3 stories, your mind is kind of blown. So I'll offer that to any one of you who wants to take a look at them.
So are your nostrils.
We'll give you a call. Any questions or comments for Mr. Walsh? Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Next, we'll go to page 1 for Bill 6719, and I believe we have Mark Millspaw, the Deputy Director of Health and Human Services.
Good afternoon, Madam Chair and members of the council. Baltimore County Department of Social Services is requesting a supplemental appropriation in the amount of $159,341 to support additional staff members to serve low-income households who need assistance making energy assistance payments to their utility companies. These are grant funds received by the state of Maryland. For many years, the Office of Home Energy Programs has supplemented its staffing with temporary staff. This resource will allow us to convert staff to grant-funded positions within county government to provide these services and bring stability to the program.
It's an excellent program. Does the Maryland Fuel Fund funnel money down to this agency?
The Fuel Fund, those funds go through Community Action Agency, which partners closely with us, but these funds all come through federal low-income housing and energy assistance, LIHEAP, which is a federal program, as well as the Electric Universal Services Program, which comes out of all of our BG&E bills.
Good. Well, I think it's important to know that there's a need especially this time of year for folks. Well, maybe not this week with the temperatures. The county executive and I actually sat on a block of ice Friday at the Avenue at White Marsh trying to bring awareness and raise money for the Maryland Fuel Fund. So it is important, folks. There's times where people just hit a bump in the road, and sometimes their heating or air conditioning bill goes through the roof, and they may be laid off for a week, or their car breaks down. It's just that little thing that backs them up, and this is a great program. Are people allowed to apply for this more than once in a year? I think that's the way it was before. Is it still like that?
So this program is not necessarily for emergency assistance. This is an ongoing income support program. So anyone who's below the income limits can apply and receive this benefit on an annual basis.
Oh, nice.
And then we do have arrearage funds that also go towards settling back due payments. And then the department, separate from this, also offers emergency assistance funds and partners with the fuel fund to assist with those situations.
Yeah, thank you. Does anybody have any comments or questions? Thank you for coming in today. Appreciate it. Next, we have Bill 70-19 on page 8, and we have Colonel David Foldenauer here from the Police Department. Good afternoon.
Which one are we doing first? The port security?
Yes.
All right, we have a grant in the amount of $45,546 that has been awarded to the police department by FEMA. The grantor requires a matching funds in the amount of $15,182, equaling a total supplemental appropriation of $60,728. Police Department is requesting to use Baltimore County funds to meet the required match. This request is for council's approval to accept and appropriate $60,728 in the FY20 funding for the Port Security Grant. Our goal of this Port Security Grant is to utilize the funding to replace one patrol or emergency response vessel, a boat with radiation detection equipment that we previously purchased in 2010.
Any questions for the Colonel? Okay, we can go on to...
One second, Madam Chair, just
Sure.
want to thank the Colonel. I believe that the security you're talking about, it would be primarily in the waters off of the 7th District. So on behalf of my constituents, thank you for your work, and let's keep those port operations safe down there.
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Thank you.
Next, we'll move on to Bill 7119. That's on page 11. And that's BJA Body Armor Grant.
Right. This one's a grant in the amount of $60,073, which has been awarded to the Police Department by the Department of Justice. The grantor requires matching funds in the amount of $60,073, equaling a total supplemental appropriation of $120,147. Police Department is requesting to use Baltimore County funds to meet the required match. This request for council's approval to accept and appropriate the $120,147 in fiscal year 20 funding for this body armor grant. The goal of the department's bulletproof vest replacement program is to provide the newest form of bullet-resistant vest available to protect and to increase the safety of its police officers. Manufacturer specifications require that tactical body armor needs to be replaced every 5 years in order to ensure the wearer's safety. The Bulletproof Vest Partnership Program funding will be utilized to replace the oldest units of body armor assigned to officers working in volatile or hostile environments such as patrol operations.
Very good. Councilman Quirk?
And then I noticed on the notes, when we look at the next, with the operating budget, actually, it includes some money also for purchasing 442 additional vests. Is that right?
So we have a replacement cycle that we do. So every year we are going to the ones that expire. We try to stick to that. So that's divided. So each year we're buying vests and trying to get through the 5-year cycle like that. So every year, roughly 400 vests get replaced so that they have brand-new equipment, and we're within that 5 years.
Okay. Councilman Batoka?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Colonel, do you have the sense that I don't know much about body armor, but I was just curious, do you have the sense that technology changes at a quick rate in that field, or is it kind of similar technology with new vests each year?
It's certainly improved, vastly in my entire career. The companies are always trying to find something that where it's just as resistant, but being lighter, being more flexible.
I see.
And by going through the cycles that we're doing, the reason we don't have the whole agency on the same replacement cycle, obviously, if we're buying up to 2,000 vests at one time, but this also, if technology is developed and has gotten better, it allows us then at 400 or 500 at a time to be able to introduce that into the agency.
Thank you.
Anyone else have any questions for the Colonel? Thank you. Next, we'll go down to miscellaneous business. Is Peter Gutwall here? There he is. We have, oh, wait a minute. I'm sorry. Am I right? Yeah, okay. Resolution 920. And Resolution 1020 and Resolution 1120.
Good afternoon, Madam Chair, members of the County Council. We're going to do all resolutions together, sort of 920, okay. So the Phase 2 and Phase 3 of Lion Homes, they're requesting or asking for authorization for a pilot for Phase 2 and then a loan and a pilot for Phase 3. Henrietta Lacks Village Lion Homes 2 and 3 project consists of rehabilitation of 126 units of mixed income rental in the Turner Station community. The rehabilitation projects involves a mixture composed of two separate projects. The two projects, Phase 2 is consisting of 90 units. Phase 3 is consisting of 36 units. If you recall, in 2017, the county provided a pilot for Phase 1 for about 118 mixed-use units in terms of a pilot. The renovation in the property will include renovation of the interiors, the exteriors to become certified lead-free housing, installation of kitchens, bathrooms, and interior features, installation of HVAC systems, energy-efficient appliances, as well as windows and doors, upgrade of electrical service, and renovations of the exteriors. The financing of the projects was approved by the Finance Committee of Baltimore County on November 4th, 2019. Phase 2 is requesting a 10-year payment in lieu of taxes. This is Resolution 11-20. The requested payment is $300 per unit for the first 5 years with a 3% annual escalation. Years 6 through 10 would increase to $400. Phase 3 is requesting a $500,000 loan from the Federal Home Program, federal funding. The term will be 4% for 40 years. This project is also requesting a pilot. The requested payment is similar to the Phase 2 project of $300 for the first 5 years with a 3% annual escalation, and then $400 for years 6 through 10.
Any questions or comments from Mr. Gutwall? Thank you.
All right.
That was easy. Next, we have Mr. Rob O'Connor from Office of Information Technology. You have two contracts. Go to page 43. Number 12. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon, Madam Chair, members of the council. I believe the first one we'll be reviewing will be the extension of the background check investigation services
Yes.
contract.
Yep,
Okay.
perfect.
The administration is requesting an amendment to a contract with Southeastern Security Consultants Incorporated, now operating as Sports Engine Incorporated, doing business as National Center for Safety Initiatives. to continue to provide background check services for potential volunteers for the Department of Recreation and Parks' various youth programs. The proposed amendment commences January 31st, 2020, and adds 1-year renewal period for the current approximate 4-year and 11.5-month term. The amendment does not increase the contract's $1.84 million maximum compensation for the entire 5 years and 11-month term, including the renewal and extension periods. Contract commenced May 21st, 2015.
Any questions or comments? I just want to say thank you to the administration. Thank you. You want to go to 13? It's an addendum for Workday.
This fiscal matter is a new contract between Baltimore County and Workday Incorporated for human capital and financial services through their NASPO master agreement under the cooperative purchasing program available to state and local governments. The county currently uses CGI Advantage for most, but not all, HR functions. All employee leave and accruals are being tracked in a legacy mainframe system, ALTA, online time and attendance. In an effort to retire the mainframe for both financial and resource reasons, the county sought to add time and attendance functionality to CGI Advantage. Due to several unique processes and MOUs within the county, Advantage will require customizations of the time and attendance offering. In May 2018, quote was received for custom work was a total of $1.9 million. After receiving, reviewing, and unsuccessfully attempting to negotiate the quote, HR, along with OIT and OBF, determined it would be advantageous for the county to seek alternative HR systems that would not require customization due to accommodate our unique needs. Due to excessive efforts, the cost to support CGI Advantage financial systems, financial HR management, and performance budgeting, the county released a RFI for full ERP system at the end of 2016. The county chose not to move forward with the ERP replacement at that time due to budget and resource constraints. When the need to look for an HR replacement became a priority, the county revisited the vendors who had responded to the RFI in late 2018. Following a full evaluation of both Infor and Workday products as a replacement for our Advantage HR system, Baltimore County government selected Workday for our future ERP. Open for questions. Before I do so, I do want to thank the Office of Budget and Finance, Office of Human Resources, the administration, Police Department, the Fire Department, DPW, and many agencies that spent hours, days, months, and within my department, years working on this. So I do want to thank everybody in their involvement.
You're welcome. Yes, Councilman Quirk.
Yeah, just curious, how many companies bid on this beside Workday?
So the RFI had, I can't remember the total number of respondents. The top 2 that met our needs and the requirements in the response or for the RFI was Infor and Workday.
It was Infor and Workday?
Yes.
What ultimately put Workday over the top? I mean, was there something?
We did 2 full day demo assessments and sent them prior to a month ahead of time actual plans for how we perform business here in the county and made them show us in their systems how they could work the budget process for Baltimore County. We had Office of Budget and Finance, we had HR, OIT involved for the 2 days, and Workday was capable of meeting those needs over and over.
Any comments or questions? Thank you. Oh, I'm sorry, Ms. Rogers.
Madam Chair, I just want to publicly thank you and Mr. Boswick and the council for allowing us to bring this contract forward, because moving it forward in an expedited manner is going to save the county over, if this is approved, over a 10-year period, over $6 million. So we really do thank you for the flexibility to move forward.
We were happy to save the taxpayers.
Madam Chair, the Auditor's Office also did a very good and comprehensive job looking this over on an expedited basis.
Right, thank you.
And we thank you for
Thank you,
the
everybody.
And I didn't have to sit on a block of ice.
Next, I believe we have Mr. Ed Blades. Page, is that 26? We have BAT number 20-04.
Thank you, Madam Chair, members of the council. This is a budget appropriation transfer totaling $76,256. This is moving these funds from the reserve for contingencies to local shares to support the 2 grants that Colonel Folderauer covered earlier for the police department. This is $15,182 for the port security grant and $60,074 for the body armor grant.
Any questions or comments for Mr. Blades? Thank you. Okay, we'll move along to, I believe next we'll have Chief Hyatt. And it's Bill 7219, page 14. And I do believe we're going to have a short PowerPoint presentation, which is up here on my left. So if you don't think you can see it back there on the left and the back, you might want to get up and move to the right side, or at least stand for a while. It's only about a minute long. So if you cannot see this screen up here and want to see the PowerPoint, please move to the right. Chief Hyatt,
Thank
welcome.
you. Thank you very much, ma'am, and congratulations. I have Meg Ferguson from our police department with me as well.
Hi, Meg.
Good afternoon, members of the council. I'd like to begin by thanking you for the opportunity to join today to talk about this critical public safety initiative. I'm here today to explain why we at the Baltimore County Police Department are requesting this piece of legislation and how this bill will make Baltimore County safer. Before I go any further, I'd like to show a brief video.
This is Houston, Texas in 2016. This is North Carolina in 2014. They came in through a roof. This is back to Houston. This is Howard County in June 2019. This is Montgomery County in also June 2019. This is the same story in Montgomery County 2 years prior. This is the aftermath of a gunshot burglary in Colorado in 2017, and now we're back to Houston.
What you've just seen is footage from incidents that we see across the country and right here in Maryland. The burglary of firearms retail establishments is a real and pressing issue of concern. According to the Bureau of Alcohol, Tobacco, Firearms, and Explosives, more than 5,650 firearms were stolen nationwide in burglaries from firearms retailers in 2018 alone. 5,650 guns. You may recall on June 12th and 13th of last year that establishments in Howard County and Montgomery County were burglarized. These locations were rammed with a vehicle, which you saw in the short film, and a total of 45 firearms were stolen. Right here in Baltimore County, 7 different firearms retail establishments were burglarized 13 times in Baltimore County in 2018 and 2019. And in fact, 3 of those incidents occurred after we announced this bill in November. 51 guns were stolen in just one of those incidents. 51 more weapons that end up in the hands of criminals. We know for a fact that stolen guns are often sold or traded to criminals, providing many who would otherwise be barred from owning firearms with weapons used to commit violent crimes. We know that because we've seen it just a few miles from where we are now. In May 2015, shortly after celebrating Mother's Day with a cookout with his wife and son, 36-year-old Harry Davis Jr. was shot and killed near his home in Baltimore City. It was later determined that the weapon used to murder Davis was not obtained legally. Rather, it was stolen in a burglary of a North Carolina firearms retail shop. Prior to being obtained, it was stolen, and then it ended up in the hands of a criminal who then murdered Mr. Davis. During my first months as police chief, I was alarmed by the scope and frequency of the incidents that we were having here in Baltimore County. Simply put, more can be done to stop these crimes, and we have an obligation to do so. That is why we are proposing the Secure All Firearms Effectively, or SAFE Act, a straightforward public safety solution to keep stolen guns off of our streets and out of the hands of violent criminals. Although firearm retail establishments are protected by staff during the day, some do not lock away merchandise after normal business hours. Others are inconsistent in how they do so, some even leaving their inventory totally exposed. Despite being frequent targets for criminals, these stores currently have no legal requirement to secure their businesses or their inventory after hours, which is a stark contrast to other retailers. For example, Medical cannabis dispensaries must meet strict security requirements under state law to secure merchandise after business hours. And under federal law, pharmacies must utilize physical security requirements to protect medications. The same should be true for firearms. The SAFE Act sets minimum security standards for firearms retailers and gun shows to deter criminals and prevent guns from being stolen. Specifically, the bill creates a new county license requiring a police department approved security plan that uses a combination of physical security, video surveillance, and alarm systems to provide a baseline level of security. Retail establishments must be monitored at all times by an alarm system registered with the county, as well as a video system. Include the following physical security elements: bollards or another physical barrier to prevent vehicle intrusion into a building, and security gates or security screens over windows, as well as either security gates or security screens over doors or a secure vestibule for doors. At night, they must secure all firearms in a safe, secure room or in a secured cage or behind security shutters when the business is closed. Similarly, gun shows must have a security plan that includes an alarm and video system and live security guard coverage after hours. The Chief of Police may approve another combination of physical security elements that provide an appropriate level of protection. Security requirements for firearm retail establishments have already been enacted in other jurisdictions, including the states of Connecticut, Illinois, Minnesota, New Jersey, Pennsylvania, Rhode Island, West Virginia, and they work. New Jersey, for example, a state with a policy similar to the SAFE Act, saw 3 firearms stolen by burglars between the years of 2012 and 2017, only 3. In contrast, in North Carolina, a state without these requirements, the same state where the gun was stolen to kill Harry Davis Jr., saw over 1,400 firearms stolen in that same period of time. The reality is that without security measures in place, firearms will continue to be stolen by criminals and sold or bartered to other criminals. The ultimate goal of the SAFE Act is to prevent these incidents. It is about keeping stolen weapons out of the hands of violent criminals. The ultimate goal of the SAFE Act is, again, steps to improve public safety in our county. And I want to be clear that most of the establishments in Baltimore County are responsible businesses and good partners. Many have already secured their merchandise after hours because they recognize their moral responsibility to do so. The Baltimore County Police Department has met with the owners and operators of establishments following each burglary incident. But even after these conversations, we have been unable to convince all of them to improve security measures to a responsible level. In drafting this bill, we again brought these business owners to the table, along with other members of law enforcement and firearms experts. As a result of these conversations, we are proposing a flexible bill that respects the unique circumstances of each individual business, because we understand that one size does not fit all firearm retail establishments in Baltimore County. We are also proposing legislation to provide the security that we need with requirements that are far less stringent than those already in place for Maryland's cannabis dispensaries. Firearms retailers have been encouraged to contact the county's Department of Economic and Workforce Development to access a range of programs and supports offered to small businesses, including low and possibly no interest loans for security or other things they need to help their businesses succeed and grow. Police administration and staff will continue to consult with owners of firearms retail establishments. Further, I'm personally committed to continuing engagement with firearms retailers for additional consultation meetings regarding implementation of the SAFE Act. We want to be clear that this public safety proposal has absolutely no impact on the rights of individuals wishing to purchase firearms. Rather, it ensures that the firearms for sale at firearms retail establishments can be purchased by law-abiding individuals rather than being stolen by criminals. In developing this proposal, we have seen that many retailers in Baltimore County are, in fact, responsible partners who have already taken significant steps to keep their inventory safe. The SAFE Act will simply require that all retail establishments be held to that same standard. As the chief for one of Maryland's largest jurisdictions, I take my responsibility to keep communities safe very seriously. That means constantly examining our policing strategies, looking at opportunities for innovation, and acting decisively to ensure that our neighborhoods and communities remain safe. Where we identify gaps in the law, we have a responsibility to close them. The investment in properly safeguarding firearms is worth just one single life saved. The SAFE Act is one necessary way that we together can continue making Baltimore County and our region safer for us all. Thank you.
Thank you, Chief Hyatt and Ms. Ferguson. And I'm sure the members have some comments or questions. We'll start with Councilman Crandall.
Thank you, Madam Chair. There's a couple things that come to mind, and Chief, you mentioned that there are states around the country who have adopted these measures. I'm wondering why this bill isn't part of the county executive's legislative agenda for the General Assembly. And the reason I say that is that in talking with some of the gun shop owners, this does place a regulatory and in some instances a financial burden. Some, it places a logistics burden on them. And if Anne Arundel County has different rules than we do, why wouldn't a dealer just pick up their shop and move to Anne Arundel County or to Harford County or somewhere that doesn't have these provisions? So I think this is something that the state legislature and the federal government, who already regulate gun shops and provide licenses, now there's a third license that a gun shop would have to pay for and administer. I also want to go back to the 13 burglary incidents that have occurred in 2018 and 19. Of those 13, only 3 of those 13 did someone actually get into the location and remove firearms. 2 instances they were stolen. The third instance, the suspect was caught fleeing. So that means 3 out of 13 burglaries. The other 10, there were measures, security measures in place that already existed that prohibited a suspect from entering the premises. So I would think that based on that data, that the gun shops are actually doing a fairly decent job on, and even better than decent job on securing their premises and securing their firearms. So I'm not sure why we would need legislation if the police department is conducting assessments and would have the opportunity, and I know the gun shop owners are very cooperative with our police department, so why wouldn't we work with the ones that that aren't as secure and that have open inventory and see what we can do to help them? So you can respond to that. I know I'm rattling on a little bit, Chief, but
No, it's okay. And you know, you're absolutely right. In case of the ones where the attempts have been thwarted, it's been because of security measures. And like I said before, and we've met with a lot of these retail establishment owners, and many of them have made strong efforts towards securing their inventory, which is greatly appreciated. The unfortunate thing is there are several that, despite the extensive efforts that we have made along with other partners, are unwilling to upgrade security measures. And as I've said before to some of you, including a particular establishment who said that their guns are insured and they weren't worried about losing them. So
you did mention that to me.
So really the issue for us, again, this is solely about keeping inventory inside of a store so that way it can be legally purchased by people who can legally buy guns. For us, this is about nothing more than ensuring that a minimum level of security is a baseline for all of these establishments.
Okay. Now I want to head on to another concern I have, and I'm looking at Title 23 of the bill. There's 3 provisions in there that give me pause because they provide a great deal of authority in a couple of individuals' hands. And when I say individuals, I mean the office that Mrs. Rogers and Chief Hyatt hold, not them in particular, not them individually, just the offices themselves. So part of the language of the bill is the Chief Administrative Officer has the sole authority to establish a fee, and that might not be verbatim. I may have put sole in there. So the CAO would set the fee. We don't know what the fee is yet. Will we know that by Monday evening?
So we've already had some extensive conversations in reference to this. I know even in meetings that we've had with some of these retail establishment owners that is certainly a concern that they have raised. we are continuing to have conversations about that. And again, in the conversations that we have had already internally, the intent for this is not to put an excessive burden on these businesses. The intent is to establish a baseline level of security.
And I believe you, and hopefully you're our chief for a very long time, and you continue to do a great job for us, but you won't always be in that seat, and neither will Stacy. So that's my concern moving forward. If the sole authority to set the fee is with one individual, you could have someone that would like to put a burden on Baltimore County gun shops because of their political views or ideologies surrounding this issue. So that gives me pause, it gives me concern. There's other language that says the chief of police may institute any action at law or equity, including injunction or mandamus, to enforce the provisions of this title. That seems like a pretty broad authority to me. And it's, again, if you have an individual who is not maybe as reasonable and is more, I guess, an anti-gun advocate or zealot, that's a lot of authority to have in one person in one seat. And there's similar language that says the chief of police and the director may each adopt regulations to carry out the purposes of this title. So that seems rather vague and arbitrary to put that much power into two individuals' hands. So I'm just, it gives me concern, and in some of the gun dealers that I've spoken with, these provisions give them concern about the future of their industry in Baltimore County.
Councilman, I think I can address those two issues.
Okay.
I'm an attorney with the police department. The reason for the instituting an action for enforcement language is because normally many county ordinances are enforced by saying a violation is a misdemeanor, and the administration is deliberately not making these requirements, putting that in that category, recognizing that making noncompliance a misdemeanor wouldn't achieve the goals and also would put these particular firearms establishment owners in a very difficult position given the strict rules they have to follow for their federal licensing and state licensing. So because the administrator wanted to avoid creating that misdemeanor risk, this is all structured as a civil process, and that's why it's structured using a license. The reason for the language that you've quoted about enforcement is that gives the administration the tools to enforce the county requirements.
Okay.
Again, without proceeding down the misdemeanor road. And with the regulations, this allows the department to issue some regulations that put some more specificity on what kinds of security measures are appropriate, which the chief intends to consult with the industry and the local owners regarding those details.
Let's go to one of those enforcement tools, and one is to put a lien on the property for a shop that is, I guess, either out of compliance or I forgot the reasoning behind when you would put a lien on the property. I'm drawing a blank on that. But how do you put a lien on a property that is leased, where the gun shop owner is leasing the shop from a private landlord?
The lien procedure is part of the county's normal code enforcement process. The administration is considering that particular provision currently while looking at final issues on the bill. That is an objection that was raised by the owners in discussions with the department, and we have conveyed those concerns.
Okay. Well, thank you for your answers. I do obviously have some concerns regarding this bill, and I think some of us have already started to discuss amendments, and we'll see where that goes over the next week. Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you, Chief.
Councilman Moore.
Ms. Fergus.
Thank you very much. I want to thank the administration for the meetings they've held with me and for the information they have provided me. I want to thank a lot of the private stakeholders who have also engaged my office, the Maryland 2A organization. It's done a lot of research. I took it upon myself with my assistant, Bradley Lang, to visit 3 establishments over Christmas week, 2 in my district and 1 outside my district but owned by a constituent. And in fact, 2 of those have had attempted entries and been successful in repelling the entries. Free State Gun Range, which on April 2018, the suspects shot at the windows but were not able to get inside. And Free State, I think, is a model for how to do this, yet they are impacted by this bill. And then Easy HQL in Perry Hall, where a brick was thrown through the glass entrance door. Suspect tried to kick home the door but was unsuccessful in gaining access. So, I kind of echo Councilman Crandall's comments that a lot of this, the industry is self-regulating at this point, and they are doing a good job. You said that twice. So I think that's a statement I did want to echo. First question, why in the world is Free State even in this bill? I mean, the way I read the bill, we're regulating businesses within 100 yards of a park, a church, a school, a public building, another place of public assembly. I've been to Free State. It's in an office park. I don't see any of those activities. Why are they even in this bill? That's my first question.
Councilman Marks, it is so large that it is itself a place of public assembly, because a place of public assembly, it's the building code and fire code standards.
I personally think that is ridiculous. That's just my personal opinion. We should be regulating based upon the proximity to a church or a school or a place like that, not just saying that because a business has an assembly, it's meeting that distance requirement. That's my personal opinion. I really question that. The second question I had, and this came up in my discussions with Free State as well, the bollard requirement. The requirements are to have a security system and bollards. Free State, my understanding is they lease, and it would be very difficult for them to maybe even place those bollards in front of the building. There's some question whether they'd be breaking ADA requirements. I mean, is the administration amenable to replacing the word "and" with "or" in the bill?
So that's why we added, as a follow-up to the first meeting that we had with the firearms retail establishments, that's when we added the caveat of another combination of physical security elements that provide an appropriate level of protection, recognizing the fact that that wasn't going to be a cookie-cutter response for cookie-cutter solution for each establishment. Also, I'd like to clarify that what I did say is that many of, and in fact, most of the establishments in Baltimore County are being very responsible, but realistically, I didn't say all of them. And our concern isn't with every single one of them, but unfortunately, the only way to establish a minimum set of standards is to do it across the board.
I understand that, and I recognize that there are a few businesses that have quite frankly have not set an example. But I look at Free State, and I think they have set an example, and I just don't agree with the interpretation of that distance requirement. So that the issue of the "and" versus "or" is important to me. And echoing what Councilman Crandall said, it's not so much this administration, it is a future administration that takes this legislation to an extreme, where you become a jurisdiction that does not have any gun retailers, and we have some very close to us. So just that. The final question I'm going to ask for now is the administration amenable to any sort of financial assistance fund to help businesses with these costs? I mean, we talked about loans. Are we amenable to grants, perhaps?
We have been inviting gun shop owners to contact the county's Department of Business and Economic Development. They've designated a senior staff member to speak with them. They've identified, I believe, even some no-interest loan funds, and there are other supports available. So we are attempting to make those and make every resource the county has available to assist them, not just with security measures, but anything they may need to grow and develop their businesses.
Okay, thank you.
Councilman Port?
Yes, just defining the terms, how many of these gun shops do we classify in the county as qualifying under this legislation? And then how many of those shops are in compliance versus not in compliance at the moment?
There are currently 19 firearms retail establishments in the county, and we believe 18 of them would fall under in a zone where the county is authorized by state law to regulate, so 18 out of 19.
And then how many of those 18 of 19 would you say already comply with what you're trying to accomplish?
We don't know. The department has not had the opportunity to, we haven't done formal security surveys. We've visited a number and are open to visiting more, and we'll be continuing discussions. That, as the chief said, the department hasn't set on specific requirements because the chief understands that every shop is different. So it's an evolving process.
But I did hear the chief say that you've been to shops and you've seen a lot of the businesses in good faith trying to make sure they're as secure as they can. And so what I'm really understanding is the problem, one business in particular, and maybe you can tell us publicly who it was, would be? Or is it a whole bunch of them? Like, I mean, I'm just trying to understand. I mean, I saw the video. I mean, I recognize that there's a issue out there, and we've seen a pretty good video detailing that. But I'm just trying to understand as well, like, where is the business community, and are we talking about one or two people that are just never going to comply, or are there any other tools that we could use to try to get them to, police their stores more? No pun intended.
Despite the heavily regulated nature of this industry, there are no requirements for security put on the industry, not by the feds, not by the federal government or the state government. There's encouragement, there's information provided, but there are no requirements. And the department is not able to discuss the details of security at any of them specifically in public. The department does a lot of security evaluations for businesses and institutions in the county and is very careful to keep that information confidential, and it's exempt from being obtained under the Public Information Act.
Do we know how other municipalities in the state, around the county, I mean not around the county, but in the state, around the nation, do we know a lot of other counties or municipalities that have similar legislation enforced?
The chief mentioned several states where some security measures are required. New Jersey is the one that we found that was closest to what we're requesting in the SAFE Act. We became aware that Montgomery County has some requirements. They are not as nearly as comprehensive, and as you can see from the video, not effective.
And so, so there's not a lot of places that maybe we could look at as far as best practices or other type of points that we could consider, we could review?
In terms of best practices for security, we actually did, the chief and her experts in the department studied the recommendations of the Bureau of Alcohol, Tobacco, and Firearms, and which works in partnership with the National Sports Shooting Federation, and did I get them backwards? Sorry, and SSF, who I believe you heard from later, who have a joint project with the ATF, making extensive recommendations to firearms retail establishments for security. We fully intend, the department fully intends to rely heavily on that expert advice. The point the chief was making was that without a requirement, some of the retailers simply won't follow that advice.
And that organization is testifying to the hearing?
I believe they are, yes.
Okay.
Councilman Toga.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Just a comment, a couple of comments to my colleagues to the right, I guess both literally and figuratively. I think the intent of this legislation is for sophisticated attacks on a gun store, not to me a brick thrown, and especially from what I saw from the videos. To me, a brick thrown at a window is really, anybody can throw a brick through a window of any store, but I think the intent here is for sophisticated attacks as we saw in the video. And so, that really concerns me. And Councilman Crandall, I know that the numbers are not great, but even if just 1 or 2 or 3 guns that are assault weapons, that I know that I doubt if the person that gets that stolen assault weapon is going to go get it registered with the state police. I think they're going to use it for some other activity, and that scares me because how do you quantify how do you quantify a life? How do you quantify one person getting shot? Is that acceptable? 2 hurt two people. I think, whatever we can do to reduce gun violence, I am very supportive of it, and I think the intent here is for sophisticated attacks on our people that do business in Baltimore County and our gun shop owners here.
Well, Councilman, if I can respond, we've had tragic incidents in Maryland. We've had tragic incidents all over this country due to firearms, some legally registered, bought legally, and some not. But I also look at the argument intellectually, and someone getting hit by a drunk driver is tragic, is it not?
Yes.
Okay. Are we going to take measures to do further regulate? Are we going to enact in Baltimore County that everybody has to blow in a pipe to make sure they're sober before they get behind the wheel?
I think they're different issues.
Okay. Well, I had something brilliant to say and I forgot it. Maybe not so brilliant in your mind.
If it makes you feel better, Councilman Crandall, it happens to me all the time.
Okay. Madam Chair, I'm done.
No, thank you.
Thank you.
So I just wanted to make a comment. First, I thought that this was very thoughtful, a very thoughtful bill, but I had questions when you first came to me, and I think a few of my colleagues have also had conversations with me about it, whether it's a gun shop, a pizza shop, a hairdressing salon. If we, the county, all of a sudden say you now need to do this, and for whatever reason, and it's going to cost a substantial amount of money, which the owner is not prepared for, hasn't prepared for, I think that we should have, whether it's grant money or very low interest loans, to help them make these improvements to their business. I was talking, I don't know, was it Mr. Crandall told me one of the businesses is going to be $50,000 for the improvement. $50,000, when you haven't prepared for that, that could put you out of business. And even something as low as $5,000 or $10,000. So I hope we as a county, if this bill does pass, that we do what we can to help those businesses come into compliance. The second comment that I have to agree with Councilman Marks. Free State is in my district, and I know that you say they're a place of assembly, but they're not just a gun shop. They train there. I believe, do they train some of our officers and law enforcement there?
I know that they do training there. They don't formally train our officers.
They don't formally train, but they have training there, and I know that they do a phenomenal job there, and they are not located near any of the places provided in the bill. So I would agree with you, Councilman Marks. I think that they are the exception to the rule. Does anyone else have any comments? Because we have a few people to speak. You done? Thank you, Chief.
Thank you
Ms. Ferguson. When I call the speakers up, the first speaker will come to the testimony table here where the chief is leaving, and the second speaker will come on the other side of these swing doors and take a seat in the first seat so we can keep moving. And you all have 3 minutes. Our first speaker is Mr. Daniel Webster, and our second speaker is Krista Nichols. Good afternoon, and thank you for coming in.
Good afternoon, Madam Chair. Thank you for the opportunity to talk about the bill being considered, the SAFE Act. My name is Daniel Webster. I'm a professor at Johns Hopkins Bloomberg School of Public Health. I direct our Center for Gun Policy and Research, and I've been studying firearm policy and firearm violence for about 30 years. One of my sub-areas of interest, of great interest, has been the diversion of guns from legal to illegal use. That's really, in my opinion, where the heart of much of gun policy and our public interest in public safety, recognizing the ability of individuals to exercise their constitutional right, but also taking prudent measures to prevent the diversion of guns for criminal use. Chief Hyatt did an excellent job of really explaining and illuminating in videos the problem that is pervasive throughout our country and really represents an important threat to public safety. These guns obviously go directly into the hands of criminals and are highly likely to be used. I want to note just a couple of things. These types of burglaries have been on the rise. Between 2013 and 2017, guns stolen in this type of manner have increased more than 100%, 134%. The ATF has not done many recent investigations, in-depth investigations of their firearm trafficking cases, but one that dates back about 15 years ago did examine the sort of the channels in which guns made their way into trafficking and into the hands for criminal use. In that case, over a 4-year period, 7,600 firearms made their way in exactly through that. And of course, these are only guns that they were able to find and track, and the numbers are likely to be much greater. I've done a couple of studies that I think are relevant to the question. One study, we looked at local and state firearm regulations. Our federal laws are relatively lax, as was indicated before, particularly as it relates to security matters. What we found is that in places that had local or state regulation and oversight that and compliance measures, substantially fewer guns diverted for criminal use under those contexts. The other study of relevance is we looked at 10 gun dealers who were sued by the New York City because of their efforts, I'll just finish that sentence if you don't mind, they were sued because they were engaged in activities that led to guns being trafficked to New York City for criminal use. A set of measures were put forward to them that they agreed to as part of the litigation that included some of the security measures included in this bill, particularly the security cameras were required. We studied those 10 dealers and the rate at which the guns they sold subsequently were used in crime in New York City. Remarkable 82% reduction in the diversions for criminal use in New York City. I don't want to pretend that all of that was related to security measures, but it was one component of a comprehensive system to try to, again, reduce the diversion of guns from legal to illegal use.
Thank you, Dr. Webster.
And Madam Chair, if I may.
I'm sorry.
No, it's okay. Not specifically directed. You can, unless you want to sit, I don't care. You mentioned that these burglaries are committed by criminals. Guns end up in criminals' hands. And one of the things that is not talked about by this body very much, and they're certainly not represented here today to defend themselves when I make this comment, but the judicial branch plays a role in this. And just one quick story, a tragic story. There was a convicted murderer, convicted in Baltimore City, second-degree murder, got a 30-year sentence. He served 3 years and 9 months and was let out, only to commit a rape on a Baltimore County elementary school campus of an 11-year-old girl. So I have a question for our judicial branch, is how in the world does a violent offender sentenced to 30 years get out in less than 4? So the judicial branch plays a role in this, because I would imagine anyone driving a car or a vehicle into a gun shop, this isn't their first rodeo. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Next is Krista Nichols, and then Jay Fisher can come forward as well. Sheriff Jay Fisher, I'm sorry.
Madam Chair, members of the council. My name is Krista Nichols, and I'm legal counsel with Brady United Against Gun Violence. We're one of the oldest gun violence prevention organizations in the country. And on behalf of Brady, I would just like to thank the council for taking up this initiative to consider measures that would prevent and reduce the number of firearms that get diverted from the legal market to the illegal market. Again, the chief and Professor Webster did a great job of highlighting a lot of the main points, so I will try to be brief and just say that from our organization, we believe that this act will ensure that fewer firearms are stolen and diverted to people who are prohibited from buying them legally. The SAFE Act is a common sense regulation that will help combat the concerning uptick in stolen guns across the country and protect residents in the county from the unique risks that stolen guns pose. These guns pose such a significant risk to public safety because they're diverted to the criminal market and ultimately recovered at the scenes of violent crimes, including homicides and robberies. So we've heard here today, the guns that get stolen from shops almost certainly end up in the criminal market. And as soon as they're taken from the store, police and law enforcement lose all ability to track these firearms. So it's really uncertain to know by the time they're recovered at a violent crime whether that was even the first crime that they were used in. So once a gun is stolen, it could have untold negative impact on public safety from that moment. And the risk is not negligible. Once data from the FBI found that approximately 22,000 guns were stolen from retailers between 2012 and 2015. The number is alarming. The ATF has expressed specifically in their budget requests that they view thefts from retail stores as one of their primary external challenges. In the absence of any federal or state security requirements, dealers in Maryland may accept these suggestions from law enforcement to heighten their security on a voluntary basis despite the significant risks that they pose to the public, and criminals do take note of that. Gun theft has been on the rise across the country. The ATF chief intelligence officer said that guns are the hottest commodity out there except for cash. Theft from gun retailers is specifically increasing at an alarming rate. According to data from the ATF, burglaries increased 48% and robberies increased 175% between 2012 and 2016. Baltimore County itself has seen 7 firearm stores burglarized on 10 locations over the past 2 years, and a single incident that resulted in 51 guns being stolen. Research published in 2018 found that changes in security requirements have proved effective. States with physical security requirements, as we've heard, like New Jersey, have a very low rate of theft from licensed firearm dealers. New Jersey does have the lowest rate, and similar to what's proposed here, New Jersey has a tie-in in the enforcement structure, which we've seen has a big impact on how effective these laws are, and that if you can revoke or suspend a license based on the ineffective security requirements, those states tend to be at the lowest level of the list. So compared to 10 guns recovered over the period that we looked at, which was 2012 to 2016, New Jersey had 10, and Maryland had 354 guns that were reported stolen to the ATF.
Thank you. Sheriff Fisher. And next we'll have John Jocelyn.
Good afternoon, Madam Chair Bevins and the members of the County Council for the opportunity to come here this afternoon to support the SAFE Act. With over 30 years of law enforcement experience, I've seen firsthand the critical need for keeping the guns out of the hands of many, many criminals. Pleased to be here in the capacity of sheriff to speak to you on this initiative. Chief Hyatt mentioned during 18 and 19, 7 of the county's operating firearm retailers were attacked by burglars, a total of 13 times. One of these burglaries that occurred, 51 guns were taken. This is a growing trend as firearm retailers and establishments are targeted by criminals. Prevalence of these burglaries in Baltimore County necessitates quick and immediate action. As we know, these stolen weapons are sold, traded to criminals, and used to commit additional crimes which threaten the safety of my personnel and the public. The SAFE Act is a straightforward public safety solution to keep guns off our streets and out of the hands of violent criminals. Specifically, the bill creates a new county license requiring a police department-approved plan that uses a combination of physical security, video security, and alarm systems to provide a baseline level of security. In my capacity as sheriff, I take my responsibility to keep Baltimore County safe, a goal that I work closely with our police chief and other law enforcement agencies to accomplish this day in and day out. I'm confident with the SAFE Act, if that is passed, that will ensure that there are less guns on our streets and we'll be better able to keep our public safety. Thank you.
Thank you, Sheriff Fisher. Next, we have John Jocelyn and then Annie Darrell. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon, Chairman Bevins, members of the County Council. John Jocelyn speaking for 2A Maryland. We are not opposed to gun shop security. However, we are very opposed to the language of this bill. It isn't well coordinated. We found many, many, many errors in it. We have 4 pages of comments on about 19 sections of the bill. For example, place of assembly. The county bill includes where you're waiting public transportation. That could be a bus stop, you're waiting for an Uber, any number of things. Under the fire code, a place of assembly has to be posted as such, which would mean the fire department is going to have to go out and post every place that would qualify as a place of public assembly. We already heard the problem with Free State. They are not, but the county bill would define them as being merely because they might have 50 people. Exactly how you monitor when you do or don't have 50 people is problematic. I did a study based upon the information provided by the county, and what I found was that 12 of the 18 dealers impacted experienced no break-ins whatsoever. There were 13 attempts, and only 6 of the 18 dealers were impacted. Only 6 of the 18 dealers impacted. Of the 13 attempts, entry was gained 7 times, or 54%, and then on only 3 of the 18 dealers. What we have is an overreach to try and solve a problem that is not as large as one would seem. Yes, we did have one bad incident. However, that was not the norm, and overall, the track record is very, very good. The dealers are concerned about security, as are we. One of the concerns we have is that there's dual agency authority. The dealer must comply with the building code as well as the police code for the security measures. These two may not be compatible. It's very possible to have security measures required that the building simply cannot accept. If you have to put these things in, the person leasing the building to the dealer may not want to lease to them anymore because it's too costly to modify the building to meet all the codes. It may trigger total compliance, which can be very, very extensive and expensive. A byproduct of this, criminals are not stupid. They're very resilient, very resourceful. The more you harden gun storage facilities, the more likely they are to stage an armed invasion during business hours. One of the videos you saw, that's what was happening. That's very dangerous. It has happened before, and it will probably happen more often if we harden the buildings to the point. I'm not saying that we don't, but I'm saying we should not be so draconian in our requirements of the dealers. It's interesting to note that the fiscal note carries no pricing whatsoever. It's more of a statement in support of the bill. It does not give any cost estimates whatsoever. That is very troubling. Thank you.
Thank you. Yes, Councilman Quirk.
Thank you, Madam Chair. A couple questions is concerns that your organization has or your group has. Have you sat down with the administration and kind of talked about the concerns and to see if there was common ground? Have those discussions have been happening with your group?
There have been discussions. We did reach out to the councilman. We reached out via PIA to the Baltimore County Police Department. We've not had any reach back from the police department, and they're the ones doing the interviews with the dealers. We certainly would be willing to talk to them.
Okay. I'd encourage, I mean, any legislation or bills, I also encourage, if you can, talking to the county executives, policy people on this, and see if there's common ground, see if there's things that everybody can work toward together. Talk to me a little bit about the cost from a business perspective to be able to comply with this bill.
Without knowing what might be required, it's difficult to know. If you start hardening a facility, you can impact the life safety code. You may have things like a sprinkler system might be required, or you might have to put in another exit door. Any number of things might happen, and the county building department and the county police department both enforcing their codes, but there's no provision in the bill for them to talk to one another. So you can have the too many cooks in the kitchen, and you have a disjointed effort that can delay the processing of permits. This is a concern. The bill doesn't address it.
So, I mean, the cost could vary widely. I mean, it could.
Absolutely.
Could be very low cost to comply, but it could be very.
Depending on the facility and the location, yes, very much so.
Does the county have any cost estimates to comply to this? Does anybody have any idea what we've been talking about as far as numbers to comply? Okay, so it is a real variation in cost and.
Councilman, in some of the conversations I've had, it's anywhere from a few $1,000s to $50,000 or more, depending on the nature of the facility. You have some very old buildings, and you have some more modern buildings like Free State. So they're all very different.
And I would think inherently, of the 18 shops that this would apply to in the county, 18 of the 19, to me, I would, not being anywhere close to understanding the details as much as I should on this bill, and that's why we have these work sessions, that's why we hear from experts and listen to testimony. I would think most of these shops would want to have a lot of security by definition. Nobody wants to be broken into, nobody wants whether their guns are insured or whether they're not. I think I'd be hard pressed to find a business owner that want their shop to be broken into or any of their inventory to be taken. What are some of the steps that businesses take now to really protect themselves from this possible situation?
Depending on the facility, you'll see bars on the windows, bars on the doors, bollards in front, alarm systems, videotapes they'll have as well. Unfortunately, you never have a cop when you need them, and that's why it happened. If the cop were there, it wouldn't happen. So you do have to rely on these systems. And you can only go so far. There is one dealer who did have an entry. They hardened the building. The next time they came back, they went through the roof. So it's how far are you going to go? If you're in a tenant store where you have a shop next door, they break into the shop next door, come through the wall. Criminals are very resourceful people, and they don't play by the rules that we understand.
Councilman Patoka.
Thank you, Madam Chair. You indicated some statistics on how many shops were robbed, had burglaries?
Correct.
And how many were successful burglaries, did you say? Was it 3?
This is based upon information provided by the Baltimore County Police Department.
Okay.
Of the shops that are listed, of the 18 that are impacted, there were 7 entries in 13 tries. And the impact was on 13 attempts, entries gained a total of 7 times, involving only 3 of the dealers impacted, or 17% of the dealers impacted by this legislation.
So 3 of the dealers had guns stolen, inventory stolen?
Yes.
In what period of time, Council Clerk?
2013 to 2019, over a 6-year period.
Okay. So in those 3 successful burglaries, how many guns hit the street?
Of the 3 successful, there were a total of 67 stolen. 7 were immediately recovered. So we have 60 firearms. If you look at it in terms of dealer years, if you will, the 6-year period for 18 dealers, that's 108 dealer years. On a percentage-wise, it's about 0.62 firearms per year per dealer.
Do you know the type of weapons, of those 60 guns that we don't know where they are right now? Of those 60 guns that we don't know where they are right now, do you know the type of weapon?
I requested the information, and the county indicated it was protected information.
So it could be 60 assault weapons.
Could be 60 firearms.
That makes me nervous, that there are 60 potential assault weapons out there in Baltimore County or somewhere that are unaccounted for.
And excuse me.
And I think that I think that's the issue that the chief is trying to address. As hard as her team is working, it makes the job and our public safety at a higher level of risk, makes the job harder, public safety at risk to have 60 weapons, potentially assault weapons out there, and we don't know where they are.
I understand.
And they're in the hands of, they're certainly in the hand, I know that those 60 most likely did not get registered, and so I understand they could be in the hands of 60 bad guys.
I understand what you're saying. I don't totally disagree with you. To put it in perspective, the ATF, from its facility in Martinsburg, West Virginia, is missing 4,000 firearms. The FBI in 2002 was missing 350. DC area police agencies are missing 350. So when you do that as a comparison, our dealers are doing a really good job.
It's all frightening to me. I know when I go to synagogue, there's an armed guard at the front of the door now. And there's perhaps other measures that are being taken. And, you know, just locally with the 60 potential assault weapons out there and the other weapons that you described that have been stolen, it's certainly a frightening world. And I think it's important that we do what we can here on our piece of the planet called Baltimore County to keep our citizenry and as safe as possible and as few stolen guns off the street. Thank you.
Thank you.
Councilman Marks?
Thank you very much. I want to begin by thanking you and also the advocates for this legislation for what I consider to be very professional and thoughtful testimony. This is a very tough issue, and I've been very impressed with the quality of the statements so far, which are very fact-driven. So thank you, everyone. Mr. Jocelyn, did you want to say anything about gun shows? It's something that has not come up yet. How this bill, in your opinion, would address gun shows?
It's a very strange thing involving definitions. The definition of a gun show is a public assembly where firearms are displayed. Technically speaking, because this is a place of public assembly, and we have probably over 50 people here, and we have an officer at the back of the room who is wearing a firearm and is on display on the officer's hip, technically this qualifies as a gun show. The bill places the responsibility for security at a gun show on the dealers, not on the promoter, but on the dealers, which means that each dealer at a gun show is going to have to go to Baltimore County and get a plan set up, and that's going to have to be coordinated with the building department. So we're looking at perhaps 80, 90 different applications coming through for a gun show that might last 2 days. The bill is poorly crafted. It isn't ready for prime time. It needs a lot of work, and I pointed that out in the 4 pages of notes that I produced.
Yes. That other question I had is, so we look at this incident from November 2018 where the 51 firearms were stolen. What mechanism does the county have right now for forcing that business owner to develop better safety requirements? What can the county do right now?
I'm really not familiar with the county's authority in that regard, but I would say that the 51, even though it is a bad number, you have to put it in perspective. If we were looking at 18 airliners and one of them goes down, that's a bad thing. But it isn't worse because it happened to have a full complement of passengers and crew. It's a regrettable incident, but it is not the norm, and we shouldn't make public policy based upon a single, though regrettable incident.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Next is Annie Darrow, and can we have Robert Warnick come forward?
Good afternoon, Madam Chair and County Councilman. I apologize. I'm coming up for air after having my son's cold. My name is Annie Darrow. I'm a single mom of 2 special needs young men. One is going to Towson University right down the road. I reside in Baltimore County in Rogers Forge, and I am a volunteer for Moms Demand Action for Gun Sense, in America here in Baltimore County, our local group. Moms Demand Action is a grassroots movement that aims to end gun violence. We support the Second Amendment and responsible gun ownership while advocating for laws that keep our communities safe. We are the largest gun violence prevention organization in the country. We have over 6 million volunteers nationwide. And now we have 13 local groups in our Maryland chapter, which includes our group that we founded several years ago. I'm here to ask for your support for Bill 7219, which would enhance security requirements for firearms dealers. The Secure All Firearms Effectively Act, the SAFE Act, will make it more difficult for thieves to break into gun stores. Research has found, and the testimony that we've heard, that stolen guns pose a tremendous risk to public safety. These common sense security requirements will help prevent both theft and gun trafficking and will save lives. Requiring serial number inventories while transporting firearms will aid in tracing stolen weapons. The accountability provision of the bill gives tools to police for the enforcement of this licensing requirement. The 6-month implementation timeline is a reasonable period for dealers to comply with the new license and security requirements. Taken together, the provisions of this bill will make our community safer from the threat of stolen and trafficked guns. Please support the SAFE Act bill to keep us all safe. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Councilman Bachoka?
I just want to thank you for your work with Moms Demand Action and for your activism, and also for your colleagues that are here today. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Next is Mr. Warnick, and then after Mr. Warnick will be Mr. John Pico.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. Before I get into mine, I want to tell you that I am the owner of the gun shop in Essex that was broken into and 51 guns were stolen. I thought I had some of the best security of any sporting goods store in this county. But I found out that the behavior of other people can't be regulated by this body or anybody else. I had a legitimate electronic company come in to do some work on my breaker panel, and my alarm system was in with the breaker panel. After a week of having them work on the electric system, they completed their job and they left. 4 days after they left, my building was broken into and the alarm never went off. I called my alarm company, and the alarm man came down and said, your alarm was disconnected. So the 3 people that was arrested within 2 days of the break-in was charged, and they were facing 200 years of jail time. They got 5 years. And now this is the point of this bill, that one incident that 51 guns were stolen and there was no way to prevent it. The law that you're trying to pass, until my store is modified to meet this law, I'll have to lay off 4 people. They'll be out of work for maybe a month or 2. I'll have to move some of the guns. I have 1,000 guns in my store. I've been in business for 37 years, and only one time have I had guns stolen, and not one of those guns has been returned to me, recovered in Baltimore County, none from Baltimore City. I don't know where these guns are, but they're not here. And there's no assault weapons in Maryland as of 2013. The building that I have is an older building, so it's going to take a lot to modify it according to the police department. It'll take me about 2 hours to display my guns every day and 2 hours to put them away every day. to meet their requirements. It's going to cost probably about $50,000 to put these modifications in. I'll lose sales during the month that they're there because I can't.
You can finish your sentence.
Okay, I can't do anything with the guns. I have cameras monitored 24 hours a day. I have half-inch bars on the windows. I have steel doors with 3 deadbolts on them. I concreted the windows all across the back of my building. I have alarms that are monitored, cameras that records 24 hours a day. To some of it, I am in compliant. But what they're saying that I need a safe room, this is going to take some effort. Thank you.
Thank you for coming in. Councilman Marks.
Did you pursue legal, if I can ask, a legal action against the security company?
No, I didn't.
Okay.
Because they really weren't responsible for these people disconnecting my alarm.
Okay, and when you had this incident occur, was it only the security system? It wasn't, you've talked about things you've done since then. Did you have anything at the time?
Yes, I had cameras and I had a monitoring alarm system. And I had bars on the windows. I've had those on there for 37 years. I've never been broken into other than this one incident, 2.
What was the, if you don't mind saying, what was the approximate cost of the 51 firearms that were stolen?
$37,000.
$37,000.
Now, I'm going to put out $50,000 to protect $30,000. It's cost effective.
I just don't know why the security system company was not held to a higher amount of liability. I mean, that's pretty negligent, in my opinion.
The security company, no, they had, there's no way that they could have prevented this employee of the electric company. I should have gone after the electric company for having an employee, but according to them, they did a background check and he had no criminal background.
Oh, I see what you're saying. Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Madam Chair. Mr. Warnick, Mr. Warnick,
Yes, sir.
would you mind sharing your former occupation with us?
I was a Baltimore County police officer for 40 years. I was a security expert for my unit. I've had over 1,000 hours of classes. I've worked with the Standing Stone consultant companies. I did security surveys during the mass shootings at high schools. There's a school district in Pennsylvania that we did a complete audit on and made suggestions on how to make it a little harder for mass shooters to come in. So I've had a extensive background in security.
Okay, thank you, sir.
Thank you. Next, we have Mr. John Pica, and can we have Mark Berger come forward?
Thank you, Madam Chair, members of the council. My name is John Pica, and I represent the National Shooting Sports Foundation. It's a trade association for hunting and recreational shooting sports. There are 5 dealers who are members of NSSF. It was referenced by Ms. Ferguson and by the chief. NSSF has partnered with ATF in a initiative called Operation Secure Store, and there are 5 different pillars to it. It's education, assessment, self-assessment, risk analysis, strategy, engagement, and response. And contrary to what you heard, firearms that were burglarized have reduced 23% per year since this program was started. So firearm burglaries, or the firearms stolen at burglaries, they've decreased. So I just want to talk about the bill very briefly. I know I have a limited amount of time. So this bill creates a license, but license is not defined. It's a license to do what? You already have to pay up for a business license, and you can't transfer the license. So if you have a license in Baltimore County and you're complying with federal law you're complying with state law, and no violations have been suggested here by any of these dealers. You try to sell your business, you can't. So this bill passes, it reduces the value of that business to zero. No one's going to buy it. So this bill says there's a license and you cannot transfer your license. So does a buyer of that business have to get a license from Baltimore County before they buy it? It interrupts the negotiations and the transaction between a seller and a buyer. There should not be a fee. I know this is not a budget balancing initiative. It's not a revenue producing initiative. These individuals already pay a fee to the federal government every 3 years. This is an annual fee. There are different sizes of, so Dick's is a member of NSSF, but so is the 1,500 square foot store that operates on very, very narrow margins. And fees, we don't even know what they are, could mean a month's worth of profit for these individuals. So I would ask that there be no fee and that we take out the language about not being able to transfer a license. If this bill is going to pass, we do have amendments to the bill so that if the individual cannot put up bollards or gates, they may have a lease that doesn't allow gates out front or bollards or even wire or mesh in front of the windows. Then it says the chief may approve a combination of security elements. I have amendments that lists a number of security elements that the chief should, including but not limited to, that the chief may consider as evidence that they comply with the law.
Thank you, Mr. Pica.
Thank you.
Anybody got a question?
Mr. Speaker, you're going to supply those amendments to the entire council?
Yes, I mean, I have copies of it right here.
Can you give them to us right now?
I sure can.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. No, thank you very much.
Thank you. Next, we have Mark Berger, and then if Andrea Kohler can come forward. Kohler.
Thank you, Madam Council. I'm Mark Berg from Free State Gun Range, a part owner and retired after 20 years from Baltimore County Police Department. We believe that all 18 gun stores support legislation that will reduce gun violence in Baltimore County. The SAFE Act will not reduce gun crime. Therefore, we do not support this bill. The bill puts the blame on for crime on law-abiding small business owner and demands that we solve a problem that you will not. An increase in crime will not go down without addressing the core problem, the criminal. Banks, for example, have no regulations like these because no regulations exist. It does not require banks to have ballards, screens, gates, or bars on windows and doors or anything else. What banks do have is a mandatory jail sentence for those who rob banks. Rather than try to force a bill on small business owners, you should pass a law that has a 5-year mandatory jail sentence for criminals who imply a gun or using it in any crime. We are confident that this would be a deterrent. Data requested by Baltimore County Police Department shows 63 guns were stolen from gun stores in the past 6 years. 57 of these were stolen from one gun shop. Only 6 guns total were stolen from the other 17 gun stores, and in fact, several of these years were 0. Evidence shows Baltimore County gun shops are not a problem. Even if the number of guns stolen from gun stores was 0, it would not make the violence needle move at all. The county is wasting valuable time and resources on a solution that will not work. We are concerned as to why the data was not considered for the workup of this bill. We can only conclude that those numbers would be damaging to this bill. This is a feel-good bill measure to show Baltimore County citizens that something is being done to curb gun violence. It is the government's job to encourage and protect small businesses, not to force their closure with legislation. The 18 gun stores easily represent 500 law-abiding direct and indirect Baltimore County jobs. 50,000 voting Baltimore County residents come through my business every and each year. These Baltimore County citizens are passionate about their Second Amendment rights, and we believe that they will make their feelings known at the ballot box. The facts supplied by Baltimore County laws, Baltimore County Police do not lie. Some in this room want to fix 1% of the problem. They are doing nothing to fix the 99%. We do not support this bill. We implore the county council to do the right thing and pass a meaningful law that will get the perpetrator who commits these crimes off the street. Baltimore County voters do not want to see businesses they support in pursuit of a hobby and sport they love to be driven out of business by a bill that fails to put the focus on the problem, and that would be the criminal. Thank you.
Thank you for coming in.
Thank you very much.
Next is Andrea, and then David Silverberg.
Hi, I am Andrea Kohler, a founding member of Baltimore Area's Mom Demand Action, and I would like to thank Madam Chairwoman and the County Council members for hearing us this afternoon. Stolen guns are an enormous threat to public safety. Many guns recovered from crime scenes have been moved through the underground stolen gun market. Of the 23,000 stolen guns recovered by police between 2010 and 2016, the majority were found to be connected to a crime, including more than 1,500 acts of violence. Research shows that strong gun dealer regulations are associated with decreased gun trafficking. A study published in the Journal of Urban Health found that cities and states with weak gun dealer regulations experienced intrastate gun trafficking 4 times higher than those in states with strong regulations. As I said, I'm a Towson resident, a teacher, and a volunteer. I am also a wife, mother, sister, aunt, neighbor, and a gun violence survivor. 4 years ago next week, I was pistol whipped, robbed, and shot in the chest by a convicted felon who got his hands on a stolen gun. It was illegal for him to possess a firearm, and yet there he was targeting me to carjack and rob. I almost died because a lifelong criminal had a stolen .38 as the tool of his trade. I spent 5 days in intensive care and have permanent injuries that will affect me the rest of my life. And as we all know, there are many more gun violence victims in our very community just trying to move on with their lives. And now I'm going to go off script because I've heard a lot about the costs of, and I understand it could be pressing to a small business owner, but my medical costs that night mounted to $100,000. And no, I was not prepared for that. There is no way to prepare for that. I had excellent health insurance, and I still ended up paying thousands out of pocket. And if you can imagine the number of people in the Baltimore area who are walking around with gun wounds, gun violence wounds, and who are uninsured, you can imagine what a crushing burden this is on our public health care system. So this is a huge ripple effect that you have to consider when talking about gun violence. I never did find out where he got the gun, and after stolen firearms enter the black market and pass through so many hands, they become extremely difficult to trace. But I can, with all authority, emphasize to you today, guns stolen from nightstands and glove compartments, from tool sheds, and from firearms dealers contribute to violent and often deadly criminal acts. And it is imperative that you support this bill, 7219, for a safer society. Thank you.
For your testimony.
Thank you very much.
Councilman Batoka.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Ms. Kohler, I just want to thank you for sharing that tragic story with us. But I just want to thank you for your activism and your work with Moms Demand Action.
Thank you very much.
Next, we have David Silverberg, and then our last speaker will be Charles Spafford.
I'm just an ordinary citizen. I don't have any particular axe to grind with this. I've never been a firearms dealer. I've never had an interest in a firearms business. My concern is the lack of specificity in the act itself. This act sets forth a lot of discretionary actions on the behalf of the police chief and her designees. There are provisions in there that talk about when someone applies for a license, they have to make the application to the county. Then the county should says it may approve it, not shall approve it, may approve it. And that can be a delay, not of days or weeks or months, but of a long time. That's one concern that I have. The other concern that I have is, why is there any kind of a restriction that a gun dealer can't be within 100 yards of a church or a synagogue or a place of assembly? That's not the purpose of this law. The purpose of the law is supposed to be to secure firearms businesses. Councilman Pataka mentioned that he goes into a synagogue and he has armed guards there. I have two grandsons who go to Hebrew school, and the Hebrew school they attend has armed guards. And the reason they have armed guards is not to protect against a robbery of the synagogue, is to protect against terrorism. That's the purpose of it. Then when I hear people talk about if it only saves one life, well, if you want to save a lot of lives, do something about the opioid problem in this county, in this state, in this country. More people die of opioid addiction probably in a day or a couple of days than die from firearms in this county in the course of a year. Finally, I want to say something about the use of these terms, assault weapons. Assault weapons used by Councilman Pataka refers to an AR-15. That's not an assault weapon. An assault weapon is different from that. This is a semi-automatic rifle that uses the same firing mechanism as most other hunting rifles and, in fact, most other handguns. They're semi-automatic, means you pull the trigger once, fires one bullet. An assault weapon fires many bullets with one press of the trigger until the magazine is expired. It has run out of bullets. The time is running short. Thank you for your time. I appreciate it.
Thank you for your testimony. Councilman Bajoka?
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you for your testimony. You and I have much in common. I agree with you that opioids are a major problem, and it's something we've tried to address as a council, and the executive office has tried to address. We went from Baltimore County, a county of 850,000 people, had 0 rehabilitation beds for people with opioid addiction. And so over the course of the past year, we now have 70 to 100, Ms. Rogers? It was 30 plus 70, so we have 100 beds. So we're taking a step in the right direction. We need more. It's not a not in my backyard issue. So you're absolutely right. Gun violence is frightening to me, and opioid addiction and deaths related to opioid addiction. We can't just be spectators in this. We can't be spectators in this. We have to be active participants and take action. And so I think that you're absolutely right. We need to address these problems, and I think we've taken steps. And I think that there's the will, and for this council and for the executive department to move in the right direction as it relates to opioid treatment.
I'd like to respond for a moment, if I may. The problem is not providing beds for opioid addicts. The problem is stopping the flow of drugs into the county. That's the problem, and no one's addressing that problem.
That's true.
Councilman Marks.
Thank you.
Excuse me, this is my meeting.
Well, he looked like he had a question. I want to answer the question.
I agree with your last statement. I completely agree with Councilman Patoka. You're exactly right. We had 323 opioid-related deaths in 2017, 348 deaths in 2018. I don't think we have statistics for last year yet. This is an area where the county executive deserves credit for really stepping up efforts. I could not even get opioid death signs placed at the police departments of the last administration, and now we have them at many of our police stations. So there is a more robust effort. I completely agree with your sentiments, but I do want to give the administration credit on this. They have made it much more of a priority, and it's very much appreciated.
Thank you for your testimony. Yes, Ms. Rogers?
Ms. Bevins, and to our speaker, we also hired an opioid cross-county coordinator. So this is an issue that we're dealing with from that standpoint in a comprehensive way across the county.
Yep, thank you.
With that, I yield back to the chair.
Yeah, thank you, sir. And our last speaker is Charles Spafford.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you, members of the council, for allowing me to speak today. I am here as the owner of Tyler Firearms over in Halethorpe. I am adamantly opposed to this bill for multiple reasons. I will, however, wholeheartedly agree that keeping firearms out of the hands of those who wish to do us harm should be the utmost priority for any gun owner or retailer. As a member of the firearms industry, there are people that portray me as a violent person and that I don't care about gun violence. That can't be any further from the truth. Firearm owners don't want our children afraid to go to school any more than you do. We just don't want our rights stripped away with knee-jerk reactions based on emotions or political opportunities. We can find a common ground solution to the problem to gun violence, but this bill is not it. This license will do nothing to make the citizens of Baltimore County safer. That is why I and the majority of firearm retailers in the county already exceed the provisions of this bill and have done so for quite some time. Not because we're required to do so, but because it's the right thing to do. Requiring us to be licensed for something we already do will not change what we do, nor will it make our firearms any more secure. We constantly work to improve our security measures to ensure our firearms do not end up in the wrong hands. We do this without government regulations and intervention. Some of my colleagues in the retail firearm trade will be unable to afford these requirements. I've spent almost $50,000 on the physical and electronic security systems that I have in place, and I will continue to spend any additional money that I have to be able to secure my firearms once criminals find a way to get into my store. They always find a way, and I'm definitely going to go off script here for a few seconds. They always find a way. I'm the gun store that the guy cut a hole through the roof. It was almost 20 below with the wind chill factor out, and he took a hatchet and hacked a hole in 2 holes in my roof. Just for New Year's Eve, there was a gentleman who took a Sawzall and decided he was going to literally cut a hole through the side of my wall. So no matter what we do, we as firearms retailers will always be fighting this battle with them. They find a hole, we fill it. They find another hole, we fill it. Doing a cookie cutter situation of you have to have this, this, and this will not work. Because once the criminals find out what we have, they just find a way around it. The other thing that needs to change in the county is maybe not with this branch, but with the judicial branch. Criminals are being convicted of crimes. The gentleman who broke into my store last January, he stole 6 firearms out of my store. They were recovered immediately. But
finish your sentence.
But he was on a 7-year sentence for another burglary from a different store. I don't know which store it was. I don't believe it was a gun store. But he was on a 7-year sentence. He was out in 14 months. Then he decided to break into my store. He's now currently sitting on a federal guilty charge that he is supposed, I believe it's on the 21st, as he's supposed to be sentenced. So, but if he was actually served at least half of that sentence, that would have given him additional years in prison to be able to rethink his options. Right now, criminals there's no consequences for their actions. They get sentenced to a year or 14 months, and then they come out, they just have street cred, and then they just continue to do it over and over again. So thank you for your time. I greatly appreciate it.
Thank you for your testimony, sir. Thank you for all the speakers that came in for this bill. Yes, Councilman Marks.
I think a number of us are considering amendments to this, and just for full disclosure, I'm looking at amendments that deal with the fee structure. I've expressed already my strong displeasure with including places like Free State Range in this, in the distance requirement. I'm looking at providing some greater flexibility in terms of requirements, so it's not just an alarm system and bollards, it's or. Those are the type of things that I'm looking at, as well as anything the administration can do to ease the financial burden on businesses. So I just wanted to say that in full disclosure. Those are the various issues that I'm looking at. And I kind of want to thank everyone for testifying. I think this was a very robust debate, very fact-driven, but very polite and civil. And I think that's excellent.
Anyone else? Thank you. I've now lost my place. We are now going to we're going to deal with some council business, page 18, Bill 73-19. Councilman Marks. Utility Service Centers.
Much. This legislation is a bill that we've worked on with BGE and the Forge Reserve neighborhood in Perry Hall. BGE plans to rebuild its substation in Perry Hall so that it's larger, more imposing on the community. The community has some concerns related to lighting, architecture, signage, drainage. This bill would simply make sure that the design of that structure is done in consideration with the Honeyglow guidelines, which dictate development in northeastern Perry Hall.
Any questions or comments for Mr. Marks? Okay. Page 19, Bill 74-19, also Mr. Marks.
Thank you very much. If I know where it was. Okay. Bill 74-19 would amend the number of lots permitted to be shown as a limited exemption residential development plan. This change would allow a proposed subdivision of land for residential single-family dwellings of up to 5 lots to be processed as a limited exemption. I'm going to read to you the other jurisdictions in Maryland that would have this same number of lots. Anne Arundel County, Cecil County, Charles County, Frederick County, Harford County, Kent County, Queen Anne's County, St. Mary's County, and in fact there are a number of jurisdictions where it's much larger than 5. It's as many as 7. So I think this is a relatively minor change and consistent with how many jurisdictions treat smaller subdivisions.
Thank you. Moving on to Resolution 1220 on page 46, and that was Councilman Catch.
Yeah, Madam Chair?
Yes.
If I may?
Yes.
Resolution 12-20 is sponsored by Councilman Catch. The resolution requests that the Planning Board examine how other jurisdictions, it's kind of a follow-up to, not kind of, it is a follow-up to Bill 57-19, which the Council passed last month, which amended part of the Baltimore County Building Code regarding the alteration or modification of agricultural buildings. Since that and had to do with these ag buildings being used for sort of tourism type of activities like wineries and things of that nature, that bill will automatically expire in July of 2021. So what this resolution does as a follow-up is it requests that the Planning Board examine how other jurisdictions treat the modification of agricultural buildings for value-added purposes and to make policy recommendations on how the county can balance the public safety, historical, and agricultural preservation issues and business interests of the county's farmers in future legislation regarding altering them in a value-added manner. In doing these recommendations, it asks the Planning Board to consult with a number of stakeholders and department heads to formulate these recommendations, and their recommendations will be requested no later than September 1 of 2020. So it gives a lot of time while the bill is still in effect, but then gives the opportunity for possible implementation of those recommendations over another year period.
Thank you, Mr. Secretary, and we will relay to Councilman Catch. You did a wonderful job of delivering that. Next is Resolution 1320. Councilman Patoka? It's on page 47, I'm sorry.
Thank you, Madam Chair. This bill relates to industrial hemp. And back in 2018, the General Assembly, I'm sorry, this resolution relates to industrial hemp. Back in 2018, the General Assembly allowed for a pilot project to grow industrial hemp in the state of Maryland. And so in Maryland, there are 63 industrial hemp farms, and there are 3 in Baltimore County. And there is one at 1810 Broadway that was brought to my attention by quite a few constituents came into the office. We've had several meetings on it. So we're doing what we can to try to remedy the situation of a balance between agriculture and this new product, industrial hemp, and how that fits being so close to a community. So the resolution requests that the Agricultural Land Preservation Advisory Board do three things. One, notify the council to changes in industrial hemp policy at the federal and state level. It notify the council of any regulatory public comment opportunities, and also it notifies the council of the introduction of any bills related to industrial hemp that the Maryland General Assembly may be putting in place. And I believe some of the members of the 11th District delegation will be putting forward some legislation to try to remedy the situation going on in environs of Broadway Road. So this resolution extensively discusses how Congress and the General Assembly have rapidly moved industrial hemp from an all but illegal narcotic crop to an agricultural commodity. It also discusses some of the negative consequences several rural homeowners in District 2 have faced, as I mentioned, living next to a small hemp farm. Hemp production in Maryland so far has been very limited, but will soon be open to all farmers. In light of this resolution respectfully asks the Agricultural Board to consider changes to the county zoning regulations that the balance of interests of rural homeowners and the interests of potential industrial hemp growers. So I would ask that my colleagues support this resolution.
Thank you, Councilman Batoka. I have a question. So is there an odor to hemp?
Yes, there's quite an odor. And I think we have some members of the community here. My understanding is that the odor is intense. It limits the ability of neighbors to do activities outside of their house that are normal neighborhood activities or family activities. It also permeates into the interior of the buildings, into the clothes. Neighbors came to me, I think in June of 2019, they started to notice that there was something different, and it became more intense through August until it became, as described to me, as unbearable. And there was also many neighbors described that they also were, there were some health issues that were occurring that they thought may be related to the intense odors coming from the hemp farm, from the industrial hemp farm.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions or comments for Councilman Batoka?
Yes, Madam Chair. So are there other, just for lack of a better term, complaints that besides odor and potential health issues? I'm just curious. And there is no THC content in this crop, correct?
Pardon?
There's no THC content
Correct.
in this crop.
It's used for CBD oil. That's the end product.
Well, in my understanding of the pilot program, currently the farmers can only sell their crop to research institutions.
I don't think that's true for industrial hemp.
Okay.
I think that because these are not research institutions, these, as I understand it, are commercial operators.
Okay. I must have read something different in the pilot program, because I had someone asking me about the program itself, thinking that the county did regulate it, which we don't.
This is the first that I've heard. The issue here is that there are certain protections in the zoning code that protect farmers. And if you move to areas where farmers have been operating and there's developments that occur around the farms, we protect farm odors and being stuck behind a tractor. However, when all of those protections were written, there was not a product called industrial hemp, and that's kind of been a game changer for many of the residents, neighboring residents, that it's not normal agricultural odors. It's a new, and it's happened so fast, Councilman Crandall, that we haven't really had a chance to kind of catch up to the industry. And so the neighbors around Broadway are really suffering with just with their quality of life and trying to have normal family lifestyle.
So can a landowner that's zoned for agriculture, can they plant this crop? Or do they need a license from the state?
They need a license, yes.
They need a license from the state, okay.
As I understand it, yes.
So I have a question and a comment. First, would the existing farmers who are growing hemp, would they be continued to grow the hemp? Or would they be grandfathered in?
Well, if we were to, that's a good question. We're in a bit of a predicament. If we were to modify the zoning code, they would then be a non-conforming use. And so it would not be a remedy. It would only, the next user could not grow industrial hemp. But to give the neighbors, the community relief right now, modifying the zoning code would not be a successful remedy.
Is it worse than living next to a pig farm? Yeah. That's all I had. If there aren't any more questions or comments for the councilman, we have 3 speakers. The first is Jody Troy. If you could come forward. Pardon me?
It's Michelle Perlman.
Oh, I'm sorry. Oh, so no Jody Troy and no PM Peterson? Just you? Took 6 minutes off.
Michelle, I just want to thank you for your patience.
Yes.
I'm going to pay my parking ticket. Madam Chairman and council members, I want to express my support, and I represent over 200 neighbors for the for Councilman Patoka's resolution to the Baltimore County Agriculture Advisory Board. The neighbors and I are requesting for some kind of zoning or legislation for a ban of industrial hemp farming within a 2-mile radius of any non-participating residents. Councilman Patoka gave you a lot of background. Beginning in 2020, just a short month, well, it's already here, the passing of the 2018 Farm Bill and the Maryland House Bill 1123 allows for the growing of hemp by anyone that can meet 2 simple requirements. Register with the Maryland Department of Agriculture, and number 2, follow the Maryland agricultural regulations. Those regulations have not been established yet because they're waiting for the final federal regulations. The USDA has recently published their federal interim regulations for hemp farming. By doing that, they allow the regulation to be open for comments for 90 days. It's been extended to January 28th. Once those are finalized, then Maryland can finalize their regulations. So the action is now. The time for action is now. As an informational note, this is not about the politics of growing industrial hemp. Industrial hemp is not medical marijuana cannabis. The difference between medical marijuana and industrial hemp is that industrial hemp is cultivated for fiber, seed, and other purposes like CBD oil. Federal and state law requires the concentration of THC, which is a psychoactive plant chemical found in medical marijuana, must be less than 0.3% in industrial hemp. So politically, that's not our concern. Our concern is about the noxious skunk stench that we have endured for over 3 to 4 months from June through November, and also the unknown effects it's having upon us. Our concerns are there are no studies on the long-term effects of inhaling the odor emitted by hemp plants. We have all suffered headaches, nausea at a significantly
You can finish your sentence.
higher rate than before the hemp odor permeated our community. About the pilot program, well, I'll be quiet.
Well,
You could ask me a question.
Well, I can clear up my confusion if you were about to do that. So the 2014 Farm Bill established the Maryland Industrial Hemp Research Pilot Program. 2018 bill, I guess, amended that. Where I was, I guess, caught up was that the program in order to get a license, it requires a partnership with
Yes.
the Institute of Higher Learning to grow industrial hemp under the research program, and then the farmers are allowed to sell their crop at the end of the growing season. So that's where my confusion was.
Right,
You're
and
correct,
that
Councilman.
will not be a requirement for 2020 to partner with a research.
So no more partnering, the research pilot's over.
Correct.
Okay.
And the 3 that are in Baltimore County, the one that is abuts to my backyard, that farm is the most densely surrounded by homes. The other 2 are not.
Is hemp grown year-round?
No.
So it's not growing now?
Correct.
And
It's
you can
already-
still smell it?
No.
Okay, so you can't smell it when it's growing?
Once it's harvested, then
Mhm.
they have to dry it.
Mhm.
They had another facility on their property to dry it.
Can you smell it when it's drying?
Yes, but not as bad as when it's grown.
Okay. So it's mainly in the spring and the summer it smells the worst?
I would say the summer and the fall.
Summer and the fall.
Summer and fall.
Okay.
And as an information note, 10 cities in California have banned hemp production until they find out more about what the effects are on us. So I think we should be out in front and do the same thing. And we are trying through the council and through legislation to get this done.
Well, I want to say, if I can, Izzy, I'll let you wrap up since it's your resolution, if that's okay with you, Madam Chair. You seem to be being usurped quite a bit today. So I'm not without sympathy. I represent the district that has the Back River wastewater treatment plant, which for how many years, Councilwoman Bevins?
Well, it was even worse before the domes went
Yeah,
on.
so, so there's probably almost $1 billion worth of improvements going into that facility, and
still stinks.
I have it, well, they're not done yet. I was going to say, finally in 2021, when the work is scheduled to be completed, I'm told by city DPW, I made them put it in writing, that odors would be controlled because the operation would be inside. So, and this is probably 30, 40 years.
I've been
that-
smelling it my
that-
entire life.
Yeah, me too. And then I also, we have in the district a neighborhood that is home to a yeast manufacturer. And the whole neighborhood, when they're cranking along, their whole neighborhood smells like rotten eggs, or skunked beer, or stale beer, or whatever. And I have documentation that goes back to the 70s with this neighborhood trying to fight this odor problem. And finally, the company that owns the plant put in, the technology was finally available, apparently, put in the odor mitigators. But that was also a 30-year fight, at
That's-
least.
Yeah. But
So
we
I
can-
understand what you're trying to head off.
Right, head off is the key word,
I got it.
because it was a pilot program. We don't have regulations made yet, so let's nip it in the bud in the regulations. And I want to also state, sorry,
No, go ahead.
that there's new studies out that this emittance from the terpenes of the plant combine with exhausts of cars and causes ozone. And it's also documented that that ozone can affect the growing lungs of children.
Wow.
So we have medical issues with it also that are documented.
How many acres are behind your house, do you know?
I believe it's 15, and
I think they're only farming 5.
correct, and they're only farming
five
five,
acres.
and 75% of them, of his farm is RC5. But this isn't aimed at that particular farmer, because next year, any field you see that's growing corn can be hemp.
I don't mean to keep us here longer, but I'm wondering if this is such a new crop. It's may have been indigenous at one point in Maryland, but it was obviously phased out when it was made illegal.
1937.
Do we know what pests may be attracted to industrial hemp as opposed to other crops?
Sounds like a committee. Councilman.
Well, we have one. It's the planning board. That's what Councilman's doing.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Let me just point out that while Ms. Perlman is here as a lone soldier, the meetings that we've had on industrial hemp have been have been some of the largest community meetings and some of the most vocal community meetings. I mean, it's a real problem, and it's a growing problem. I hope that my colleagues in District 11 take the appropriate state action, because it's moving so fast. It almost reminds me of vaping, where it was a craze and everybody thought it was really cool to vape, and everybody thinks it's really cool to put CBD or take CBD or.
Well, CBD oil is not approved by the FDA.
It's not.
It's actually contraindicated with pregnant women and women who are nursing. So the CBD phase, I don't know where it's coming from.
And I'm not a medical professional, so I'm not going to comment on that, but I will, our business is to make sure that the residents of Baltimore County have a good quality of life. And so that's why I feel that this council needs to act, as well as the General Assembly, so that this issue doesn't get ahead of us, but we're ahead of it.
Thank you all.
Thank you again, Michelle, for your patience.
Yep, thank you.
And the only person that I think can fix your ticket is this young lady right there.
I believe we only have one last piece of business, and the county executive created an Office of Ethics and Accountability a few months back, and he has searched far and wide and found an individual that he believes is the person to be the director of that agency. And today we actually got to have conversations and interview with that person. His appointment is Ms. Kelly Beckham Madigan, and if you would like to come up to the testimony table. Well, at least you got a taste of how all this works and how long it can take. This is not normal.
It's such a pleasure to go after the skunk-smelling bell.
Yeah. So thank you for coming in. If you want to share a little bit about yourself and what the Office of Ethics and Accountability is going to be doing for the citizens of Baltimore County. You've got more than 3 minutes.
Thank you, Madam Chairwoman and members of the council. Thank you for allowing me the opportunity to be here. I'm very excited about this new office and the opportunity to build something from scratch. A little bit about my background. I have been a career public servant for approximately 15 years. I've always been a prosecutor. I've been both an assistant state's attorney for Baltimore City, as well as the deputy state prosecutor for the Office of the State Prosecutor, and then the acting state prosecutor. I'm very committed to the idea and message behind transparency in government and accountability. And I think that my unique experience, both as a lawyer, as a prosecutor, as an investigator with the Office of the State Prosecutor, brings all of those different unique qualities to the table in approaching this position. This position is really two different parts. One, it is going to assume the executive director of the Ethics Commission, which had been formerly housed under the county attorney's office. And there are some responsibilities and duties associated with becoming the executive director of the Ethics Commission. I would just like to, I hope to bring some experience with that, working with other ethics commissions statewide, but also just complement the efforts that have gone forth, but also try to take an opportunity to bring ethics kind of into modern technology. I would like to have a better website. I would like to envision having financial disclosures that I know members of the council have to fill out right now. They're paper copies. It would be my vision to try to have that be brought online, that those would be able to be monitored online and filled out online, as well as mandated ethics training, which is very important and is mandated by law. I'd like to try to bring that also to have that be online trainings and have it be more kind of real life situations. With respect to the other part of this department, which is kind of most similarly situated as an Office of the Inspector General, I would like to work going forward with Ms. Smulkinson in her office as the county auditor and be an independent agency tasked with working on behalf of Baltimore County citizens to root out fraud, waste, and abuse. And I think that that's a very important message. And I think that it's a message that while other agencies also have the same mission, I think it's a good opportunity to be collaborative and work together going forward to build an independent agency that everyone can have trust and faith that they're going to do the right thing. And one of the things that I'm looking forward to doing, not only in meeting with my counterparts from other parts of the state and other states, is, as we discussed, when you're creating a new agency, it's really important to get it right the first time. You kind of have nobody to blame but yourself if it's not going the way it's supposed to. So I think that's really important, and I'm also looking forward to getting feedback from other agencies within the Baltimore County ecosystem as to best practices going forward.
Very good. Are there any comments or questions? Yes, Councilman Marks.
Thank you very much. It was a pleasure meeting you earlier.
You too.
You are precisely the type of candidate who should be filling this position. The county executive chose very wisely. And I was very impressed with not only your experience at multi-levels of government, but also your can-do attitude. You're absolutely correct about the financial disclosure forms. I serve on the Critical Areas Commission. I got my forms the other day electronically, and they were very easy to complete. And they come right after January 1st, it seems. So you're right about making that more electronic and kind of continuing to modernize the office, and I look forward to working with you in the future.
Thank you, and I don't want to set myself up for failure, but I hope that this time next year you'll receive an email from Baltimore County government reminding you that your financial disclosure is due and can be completed online.
Yep.
That would be awesome. Anyone else? Councilman Bachoka?
Madam Chair, and Ms. Madigan, yes, I want to also echo what Councilman Marks said. Thank you for meeting with us earlier, and I think your experience will serve you well and serve Baltimore County well, especially because you've worked in other jurisdictions and at the state, and it's kind of a fresh set of eyes on what we've been doing here in Baltimore County, and I think seeing things through a new lens can be really helpful to all of the things that we do here in Baltimore County. So I look forward to working with you.
You as well.
Kelly, it was very nice meeting you this afternoon, and I think that you're very enthusiastic about this position, and you're a kind of can-do kind of person, and I'm looking forward to working with you, and hope that the citizens of Baltimore County, actually appreciate that this office is now going to be available for them and for county employees and the different agencies, and I think it's a step in the right direction, and I know that I will be supporting you on your nominations. So,
thank you very much.
Yep.
I will echo what my colleague said. It was nice talking with you today, and it's pretty obvious that you are passionate about getting to the truth, and I think you're passionate about your public service that comes through not only in your resume but in but in your interview today. Get ready. Be-
Open for business.
Because, yes, well, I mean, I think that you know, there are things that we know about as council members that are brought to our attention and that are pretty serious allegations, and then there are things that come through that are really frivolous.
Knucklehead.
And then, yeah, and then there's others like something that was brought up when we were in the middle of a session, and that's a county contractor was cutting county grass and didn't have the blade down. So that remember that? So that's kind of I think the things that will come through your office will run the gamut, and I also appreciated your acknowledgement that with the Ethics Commission and the County Auditor's Office that there are tools in place and people in place that you can work collaboratively with to assist you in doing your job and serving the people of Baltimore County. Welcome aboard.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. And we'll see you on Monday.
Tuesday.
Tuesday.
See you on Tuesday.
Oh, that's right, the holiday. Oh,
Thank you.
yeah, Tuesday. All righty, I think that concludes today's work session. Thank you, everyone, for coming in. Have a safe drive home.